The rifle report echoed across the darkness like a judge's gavel. One shot, one kill, distance impossible. The RPG warhead detonated against stone instead of flesh, painting the night in chemical fire. Sergeant Ethan Cole's hands shook as he lowered his binoculars. The new transfer, the one they'd been mocking for 3 days straight, hadn't even broken a sweat. Her voice crackled through the radio again, flat as Kansas highway. Sand Viper confirms threat neutralized. Sand Viper, not a call sign. A ghost story with a body count. Lieutenant Cade tore open her personnel file with trembling fingers, and the black redaction bars told a story more terrifying than any combat report. They hadn't sent him a trainee. They'd sent him a weapon someone tried very hard to bury. Before we dive in, if you want to see how this story ends, if you want to know what turned Mara Knox into Sand Viper, and whether she'll survive what's coming next, stay with me until the very end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The C-130's cargo ramp yawned open like a throat, and the Kandahar sun hit them with the force of a physical assault. 118 degrees of liquid heat that turned breath into labor and sweat into steam. Sergeant Ethan Cole had done this dance 11 times before, but the shock never dulled. The desert didn't care about experience. It just took. He watched the new transfer step down the ramp with her duffel and pack, moving like someone who'd learned early that confidence attracted the wrong kind of attention. Skinny, maybe 120 soaking wet. No combat patch on her right shoulder. No ribbons above her name tape except the basics. Marksmanship, PT, the participation trophies they gave everyone who survived basic. Knox M, it read. Specialist. Signal Corps. Another fucking POG, someone muttered behind him. Private First Class Torres, built like a fire hydrant, with the kind of vocal contempt that came easy when you'd never been tested. She gonna fix our Wi-Fi? Scattered laughter rippled through the formation. Cole didn't join in. Something about the way she moved bothered him. Not weakness, but control. The kind of stillness that spoke fluent violence. Lieutenant Ryan Cade strode down the line like a man auditioning for a statue. 6'2", West Point pedigree, jawline sharp enough to open mail. He'd been running Delta Platoon for 8 months, and in that time he'd cultivated exactly 2 expressions, stern competence and sterner disappointment. "Listen up," Cade announced, voice cutting through the tarmac shimmer. "We've got a new body. Specialist Knox, communications. She'll be handling radio traffic, message traffic, and staying the hell out of the way during contact. Questions?" Knox stood at ease, eyes fixed on the middle distance. She didn't react to the designation, didn't bristle at the dismissal, just absorbed it like she'd heard worse. "She shoot?" Torres called out. Cade's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "She's Signal Corps, Torres. She types." More laughter. Knox's expression didn't change. Cole studied her hands. No fidgeting, no nervous energy. She held herself like someone waiting for a bus, patient, economy of motion, aware of her surroundings without appearing to look. Her eyes moved in small increments, cataloging faces, gear, angles of approach. Combat vision, his instructors had called it in Ranger School. The ability to see a battlefield while standing in a parking lot. Signal Corps my ass, Cole thought. The forward operating base, FOB Rattlesnake, because some asshole with a map and a sense of irony thought it was funny, squatted in a valley between 2 ridgelines like a scab on the Earth's skin. HESCO barriers filled with dirt and hope. Guard towers manned by soldiers who'd stopped believing guard towers mattered. Burn pits that turned yesterday's trash into today's cancer. Cole showed Knox to her hooch, a plywood box with a cot, a footlocker, and ventilation that was theoretical at best. She dropped her duffel without ceremony. "Chow's at 1800, Cole said. "Briefing at 1900. Try to stay hydrated. This heat'll cook you from the inside." "Roger." Her voice carried a Midwest flatness. Iowa, maybe, or Nebraska. Cornfield vowels. He waited for the usual questions. "Where's the latrine? When do I meet the CO? What's the threat level?" Instead, she unzipped her duffel and began unpacking with mechanical precision. Clothes rolled tight, toiletries in a clear bag, field manuals stacked by size. "You been downrange before?" Cole asked. "No, Sergeant." "Family military?" No, Sergeant. He tried another angle. What'd you do to piss off Branch? Signal usually stays in the wire. She looked at him then. Direct eye contact, no challenge in it, just evaluation. I volunteered. For this shithole? For the job. Cole felt something cold walk down his spine. She wasn't lying, but she wasn't telling the truth either. The space between those two things held teeth. All right, he said slowly. Get squared away. Welcome to the rattlesnake pit. She nodded once, dismissed him without dismissing him. Cole left feeling like he'd just failed a test he didn't know he was taking. The briefing room smelled like coffee, sweat, and optimism gone stale. 23 soldiers crammed into a space designed for 15, standing room only, radiating the low-grade hostility of people who'd been stuck together too long. Lieutenant Cade stood before a map of the valley, blue for friendlies, red for confirmed enemy, orange for probable. There was a lot of orange. Intel reports increased activity in Sector Charlie 7, Cade said, tapping the northeastern quadrant. Weapon caches, IED emplacement, possible staging for a larger operation. Battalion wants eyes on. We step off at 0400, sweep the Wadi systems, report what we find, return by 1600. Standard recon patrol. Standard. The word hung in the air like a lie everyone agreed to believe. Rules of engagement remain yellow. Positive ID before firing. We're guests in this country, gentlemen. Let's act like it. Staff Sergeant Chen raised a hand. Air support? On standby. Apaches out of Kandahar, 15-minute response if we call it in. 15 minutes. Might as well be 15 years when the bullets started flying. Specialist Knox will be running comms, Cade continued. She's our link to TOC, so if she goes down, we're deaf and blind. Keep her in the middle of the formation, keep her alive. Knox sat in the back row, notebook open, pen moving in short, efficient strokes. Not doodling, making a map. Cole could see it from his angle. Elevation markers, choke points, fields of fire. She was building the battlefield in her head before they'd even left the wire. Torres leaned over and whispered something to Private Gomez. They both glanced at Knox and grinned. She didn't react. Didn't even seem to notice. Questions? Cade asked. Yeah, Torres called out. Who's carrying the extra radio batteries? Because I'm not hauling. You'll carry what you're told to carry, Private. Cade's voice could have flashed frozen water. Anything else? No? Then get your gear prepped. Rack time at 2,200. We roll in 5 hours. The room emptied in a controlled stampede, soldiers moving with the resigned efficiency of men walking towards something unpleasant but inevitable. Cole caught Knox at the door. You good? Good, Sergeant. You know how to call for fire? 9-line medevac, close air support, indirect fire request. Yes, Sergeant? He studied her. You know them, or you know how to sound like you know them? The corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a smile, more like muscle memory of one. I guess we'll find out. The desert night hit like a slap, 118 degrees to 62 in the span of a sunset. Cole sat outside his hooch, cleaning his M4 by muscle memory, watching Knox do the same 3 hooches down. She'd drawn a crowd. Torres and Gomez stood over her, backlit by a flickering bulb, performing for an invisible audience. So what's a signal girl know about fighting? Torres asked, voice loud enough to carry. You gonna throw a laptop at them? Maybe bore them to death with a PowerPoint, Gomez added. Knox kept cleaning her rifle, didn't look up. I'm talking to you, Torres said, stepping closer. She set down the cleaning rod, looked at him, said nothing. What's the matter? Cat got your... Torres. Cole's voice cut the distance. You got somewhere to be? Torres turned, sized up the interruption, decided it wasn't worth it. Just making conversation, Sergeant. Make it somewhere else. They wandered off, laughing, already forgetting her. Cole walked over. Knox had gone back to her rifle, running a patch through the barrel with the kind of attention surgeons gave to incisions. Don't mind them, Cole said. They're bored. Bored soldiers get stupid. I've noticed. He sat on an ammo crate. You ever think about fighting back? Verbally, I mean. No point. Why not? She looked at him then, really looked, and for just a second he saw something beneath the flat effect. something cold and old and familiar with darkness. Then it was gone. Because words don't change minds, Sergeant. Results do. 0400 came fast and mean. Cole woke to the sound of rifles being charged, gear rattling, whispered profanity. The FOB generators hummed their endless diesel hymn while soldiers transformed from sleeping bags to combat loadouts. Knox emerged from her hooch already dressed, plate carrier fitted, helmet squared, rifle slung across her chest. She moved to the staging area without fanfare, checked her radio, tested the headset, ran through frequencies like a pianist warming up. Cade gathered them in the pre-dawn darkness, 23 shadows with rifles. Standard wedge formation, he said. Chen, you've got point. Torres, Gomez, left and right security. Knox, you're in the middle with me. Cole, you've got rear security. We move slow, we move quiet, we move smart. This isn't a gunfight. It's an intelligence gathering operation. We see something, we report it, we move on. Are we clear? A murmured chorus. Clear. Then let's move. The gate rattled open. They stepped into the valley. The desert before dawn existed in gradients of darkness. Black, charcoal, slate, ash. Cole moved through it with his nods down, the world rendered in shades of artificial green, depth perception gone, everything flat and strange. The patrol spread out in a tactical wedge, each soldier maintaining interval and spacing, weapons up, scanning sectors. This was the rhythm Cole knew. Step, scan, breathe, step, scan, breathe. The meditation of controlled paranoia. Knox moved like she'd been doing it for years. No stumbling, no noise discipline violations, no rookie mistakes. She kept pace with Cade, radio handset clipped to her vest, one hand on the rifle, the other free for quick access. Professional, smooth, too smooth. The Wadi system opened before them, a dried riverbed carved by water that hadn't flowed in decades, flanked by rock formations that could hide an army. Perfect ambush terrain. Every instinct Cole possessed screamed trap, but Intel wanted eyes on, and Intel didn't care about instincts. They descended into the Wadi. Hold, Chen whispered over the radio. The patrol froze. Chen knelt, examining the ground. Cole moved up, staying low. Fresh tire tracks, deep treads, recent. A technical truck, maybe, or a civilian vehicle loaded heavy. The tracks ran northeast, parallel to the Wadi's floor. How old? Cade asked. 6 hours, maybe less. Chen stood, scanning the ridgeline. Could be locals, could be something else. Document it. Keep moving. They pushed deeper. The sun began its slow assault on the eastern horizon, painting the sky in gradients of threat, purple, rose, orange, yellow. The green world of the nods began to wash out. Cole flipped them up, letting his eyes adjust to natural light. That's when he saw Knox. She'd stopped moving, stood perfectly still, head tilted, like she was listening to music no one else could hear. Knox, Cade hissed. Move. She didn't move. Specialist, I gave you an order. She raised one hand, palm out, universal signal for stop. And then she did something that made Cole's stomach drop. She unclipped her radio handset and switched it off. Cade's face went purple. What the hell do you think? She pointed. Not at the ground, not at the ridgeline, at the air itself. Cole squinted, following her finger. At first he saw nothing. Then, there, a glint. Sunlight reflecting off glass or metal high up on the northern ridge, maybe 400 meters out. Possible observation post, Knox said quietly. Thermal optics based on the lens signature. They're watching the Wadi floor. We keep moving. We're silhouetted. Cade stared at her. You can see that? Yes, sir. From here? Yes, sir. Cole pulled out his binos, glassed the ridge. It took him 30 seconds to find what she'd spotted in 3. A small depression in the rock, unnatural shadow, and yes, the faint outline of a human shape. Jesus Christ, he muttered. Cade's jaw worked. He wanted to dismiss it. Cole could see that. Wanted to assert control, maintain hierarchy, prove the new girl didn't know what she was talking about. But he'd also seen too many body bags to let pride kill soldiers. All elements, halt in place, Cade said into his radio. We've got possible hostile observation. Stand by. The patrol froze, scattered across the wadi floor like dropped toys. Knox was already moving, not forward, but laterally, sliding along the wadi's southern wall, using shadow and rock for concealment. She found a position behind a boulder, went prone, brought her rifle up. "Knox, what are you—" She fired. The shot cracked across the valley, sharp, clean, final. 400 meters away, the watcher dropped. Silence. Then chaos. Automatic weapons fire erupted from 3 positions simultaneously: North Ridge, East Slope, and directly ahead, muzzle flashes strobing in the dawn light. Rounds snapped overhead, chewed rock, kicked up dirt. The ambush they'd walked into activated all at once. "Contact front! Contact left!" Chen screamed. Soldiers scattered for cover, returning fire. The careful formation dissolving into survival instinct. Cole dove behind a boulder, brought his rifle up, searched for targets. Muzzle flashes, dozens of them. This wasn't a small cell. This was a platoon-sized element, pre-positioned, waiting. "Knox, call it in," Cade shouted, pinned behind a rock outcropping. "We need air. We need QRF. We need everything." Knox already had the handset to her ear, voice calm as a weather report. "Rattlesnake TOC, this is Delta 2-1, troops in contact, grid November." Delta 7-4. 2583. Multiple hostile forces requesting immediate air support and quick reaction force. How copy? The response crackled back. Knox relayed it to Cade. Apaches inbound, ETA 12 minutes, QRF rolling in 20. 12 minutes. Might as well be 12 hours. An RPG streaked across the wadi, green contrail, terrible beauty, and detonated against the far wall. Rock shrapnel sprayed. Someone screamed. "Gomez is hit!" Torres yelled. Cole low-crawled toward the sound, found Gomez clutching his arm, blood sheeting between his fingers. I'm good," Gomez gasped, but his face had gone the color of old paper. "Stay down," Cole ordered, already pulling a tourniquet from his kit. Another RPG, this one closer. The shockwave felt like a punch from God. Cole's ears rang. He looked back toward Knox's position. She'd moved again, relocated to higher ground, found a crevice in the rocks that gave her elevation and concealment. She was shooting methodically, not spraying and praying like everyone else. Aimed shots, controlled breathing, each trigger pull deliberate. A fighter rose from cover to throw a grenade. Knox dropped him. The grenade detonated in place. Another fighter tried to flank left. Knox tracked him through 3 seconds of movement and put him down mid-sprint. She wasn't fighting scared. She was fighting like someone who'd done this before, done it enough that the fear had been surgically removed. "Where the fuck did you learn to shoot?" Cole shouted. She didn't answer, didn't even acknowledge the question. Just kept working, each shot a period at the end of a sentence. The volume of incoming fire decreased, not because the enemy was retreating, but because Knox was removing them from the equation. 7 minutes in, the enemy RPG team repositioned. Cole saw them moving, tried to get a shot, couldn't get the angle. Knox saw them too. She adjusted her elevation, led the target, waited for them to crest a rise. 300 meters. Moving target. Uphill angle. Crosswind. She fired. The RPG gunner's head snapped back. The rocket tumbled loose, detonated against stone, and the fireball swallowed his assistant. "Holy shit," Torres breathed. 10 minutes in, the Apaches announced themselves with the sound of rotors and salvation. They swept in low, 30mm cannons singing their brutal song, and what was left of the ambush scattered like roaches when the lights came on. Cade stood slowly, chest heaving, face slick with sweat. He looked at Knox like he was seeing her for the first time. "Casualties?" he called out. "Gomez hit. Stable," Cole reported. "Everyone else intact." "Count bodies." They did. 11 confirmed enemy KYA scattered across 3 positions. Knox had personally accounted for 7. Cade walked over to where she stood, reloading her rifle with the casual efficiency of someone checking email. "Specialist," he said. "Sir? Where did you learn to shoot like that?" She looked at him. Her expression hadn't changed, same flat effect, same neutral mask. But her eyes carried something else now, something Cade couldn't quite name. "Advanced marksmanship course, sir. Fort Benning." "Bullshit." She didn't respond. Cade took a breath, visibly forcing himself calm. When we get back, you and I are having a conversation about your personnel file. Yes, sir. The QRF rolled up in MRAPs and the whole circus began. Medevac for Gomez, evidence collection, radio reports, photographs, the bureaucratic machinery of violence. Cole helped load Gomez onto a stretcher, watched the medics work, and tried not to think about how close they'd come. When he looked for Knox, she was sitting alone on a boulder, drinking from her camelback, staring at nothing. He walked over. Hey, she glanced up. Sergeant? That was some shooting. Thank you, Sergeant. I mean it. I've been doing this 11 years, never seen anything like it. She didn't respond, just took another drink, capped the reservoir, stood. We should get back, she said. Knox. She stopped. Who are you? For a long moment she didn't answer. Then, I'm Signal Corps, Sergeant. I type. She walked away, leaving Cole standing in the killing ground with a question he couldn't shake and an answer he didn't believe. Eat. Back at the FOB, while the platoon showered off blood and dust and adrenaline crash, Lieutenant Cade sat in his office with Specialist Knox's personnel file spread across his desk. Most of it was standard: enlistment date, training scores, medical history, next of kin. But every third page carried black redaction bars, entire paragraphs swallowed by classification. What he could read made his hands shake. Special operations training, language school, advanced combat skills, commendations from units that technically didn't exist. And then, abruptly, a discharge review board, rank reduction from sergeant to specialist, reassignment to Signal Corps, and a note that made his blood run cold. Operator removed from active status pending psychological evaluation. Incident report classified under JSOC authority. Recommendation: administrative duties only. No combat assignments. Someone had written in the margin, pen digging into paper, do not deploy. And yet here she was, downrange, in his platoon. Cade looked up as Sergeant Cole entered without knocking. Sir, we need to talk about Knox. I know. She's not Signal Corps. I know. Then what the hell is she? Cade turned the file around, let Cole read, watched his face change. Jesus Christ, Cole whispered. They buried her. Not deep enough. What happened? What did she do? Cade found the page. Heavily redacted, barely legible. But the gist was clear. Mountain operation, team compromised, junior operator assumed command without authorization, carried survivors through enemy territory for 3 days, called in strikes on her own position to break pursuit. 5 KIA, 12 wounded, 37 enemy dead. The commendation was never processed. Instead, she got a rank reduction and a scarlet letter in her file. She didn't wait for permission, Cade said quietly. Permission to what? To win. Cole sat down hard. So what now? Cade closed the file. Now we have a problem. Because that woman just saved our asses, and according to this, she's not supposed to be here. Someone sent her anyway. Why? That's what I'm going to find out. That night, Cole found Knox on the perimeter, standing watch in Tower 3. She'd volunteered for it. Nobody volunteered for tower duty. And she stood there in the darkness, scanning the valley through NVGs, methodical and patient. He climbed the ladder. She didn't acknowledge him. Mine company? Free country, Sergeant. He leaned against the sandbags. The desert spread out before them, vast and hostile and indifferent. I read your file, he said. She didn't react. Or what's left of it. Then you know I'm not supposed to be here. Yeah. He paused. You want to tell me what happened? No? Fair enough. He waited. Sometimes silence worked better than questions. She was quiet for so long he thought the conversation was over. Then, have you ever had to choose between following orders and keeping people alive? Cole thought about firefights and rules of engagement, about lawyers who'd never heard a shot-fired writing doctrine in air-conditioned offices. Yeah, he said. What did you choose? Keeping people alive. Did they thank you for it? He knew where this was going. No. She nodded like he'd confirmed something. That's the thing about doing the right thing for the wrong reasons. The reasons are what they remember. And what were your reasons? She lowered the NVGs, looked at him directly. In the dark, her eyes were just shapes, but he felt the weight behind them. I had 12 guys bleeding out in the snow, no air support, no extract, and a company of hostiles closing the net. My team leader was dead. My sergeant was gut shot and making bad calls. I had two choices: follow the chain of command into a grave or break it and bring people home. So you broke it. I broke it. Her voice didn't waver. Took tactical control. Called strikes on our position to break their pursuit. Marched everyone who could walk out of that valley. Carried the ones who couldn't. And they court-martialed you for it. They couldn't court-martial me. I'd followed all the rules that mattered, just not the ones about who gets to give orders. So they buried me instead. Took my rank. Took my unit. Put me somewhere I couldn't embarrass anyone. Signal Corps. Signal Corps. Cole processed that. So why volunteer to come here? You could have ridden out your contract stateside, separated quietly. She raised the NVGs again, resumed her scan. When she spoke, her voice carried something new. Not emotion exactly, but the echo of it. Because typing reports while people die feels a lot like dying myself. They stood in silence after that, watching the desert, waiting for dawn or contact, whichever came first. The next morning, Torres and Gomez were different around her. Not friendly, that would have been too much, but careful, respectful. Like they'd finally learned that quiet didn't mean weak. Knox didn't acknowledge the change, just went about her business, radio checks, equipment maintenance, the endless mundane work of staying alive in a place designed to kill you. But Cole noticed something. She was watching the valley, not casually, systematically, like she was reading a language written in shadows and heat shimmer. At 1300, she found Cade in the TOC. "Sir, we have a problem." He looked up from his reports. "Go ahead." The attack pattern yesterday wasn't random. They knew our route, our timing, our formation. Someone's been watching us. We already know there was an OP, not just watching during the patrol. Watching the FOB, tracking our patterns. She unfolded a hand-drawn map, the valley, the Wadi system, the FOB, all rendered in careful detail. Look at the attack positions. They weren't set up for an ambush in that specific Wadi. They were set up to hit us anywhere in a 3-click radius. That takes planning, observation, time. Cade studied the map. "You're saying they've been tracking us." "I'm saying they've been studying us. Learning our patrol schedules, our QRF response times, our air support delay. Yesterday was a test. Next time will be the real thing. Next time." "Yes, sir. There's going to be a next time." He looked at her, this ghost in Signal Corps camouflage, and felt something cold settle in his chest. "When?" "Soon. They'll wait until we're confident again, complacent. Then they'll hit us when we're not expecting it." "And how do you know this?" Her expression didn't change. "Because it's what I do." That night, 0430, the first mortars hit. Cole jerked awake to the sound of explosions, that distinctive crump whoosh of incoming rounds, the scream of shrapnel, the percussion wave that turned air solid. He rolled out of his cot, already reaching for his gear, instinct faster than thought. The FOB's alarm shrieked. Soldiers poured from their hooches, half-dressed, weapons up, running for fighting positions. Another mortar hit, closer this time, close enough that Cole felt the heat wash over him. "Incoming! Get to your positions!" someone was screaming. Cade, probably, or Chen, hard to tell through the chaos. Cole sprinted for his assigned sector, the western wall, and dove into a fighting hole just as another round detonated where he'd been standing. Dirt rained down. His ears rang like church bells. He brought his rifle up, peered over the berm. The desert was dark. No moon, no stars, just the flash of explosions painting everything in strobe light snapshots. "Contact front!" someone yelled. Small arms fire joined the mortars. A K reports, distinct and close. Cole saw muzzle flashes, maybe 200 meters out, advancing in pairs. Probing attack, testing defenses, finding weak points. He returned fire, short controlled bursts aiming at flashes. Beside him, Torres appeared, breathing hard, eyes wide. "Where's Knox?" Cole shouted over the noise, Radio position! With the LT! Another mortar. The guard tower took a direct hit, sandbags exploding, wood splintering. Cole didn't see if anyone had been inside. The radio position was at the center of the FOB, reinforced, protected, theoretically safe. Cole glanced back, saw Cade crouched there with the handset, calling for support. And Knox? Knox wasn't in the bunker. She was outside it, prone on the ground, monocular pressed to her eye, scanning not toward the gunfire, but away from it. South. Opposite direction. What the hell was she doing? The incoming fire intensified. Whoever was out there had gotten bolder, closer. Cole could hear them now, shouting in Pashto, coordinating. This wasn't random. This was organized. Knox's voice cut through the chaos, calm as a Sunday morning. Lieutenant, recommend you shift indirect fire to Sector Papa. They're staging an assault from the south. This is a fixing action. What? Cade looked at her like she'd spoken Martian. The shooting in front is a distraction. The real attack is coming from behind us. 90 seconds, maybe less. How can you possibly... Fresh vehicle tracks in the sand. Thermal signatures. I can see them moving. Trust me or don't, but if we don't shift fire right now, they're going to roll right through our southern perimeter. Cade hesitated. Cole saw it from across the compound. The split second of doubt, of ego, of habit clashing with necessity. Then Cade grabbed his handset. All positions, reorient to Sector Papa, southern exposure, prepare for assault from... The southern wall exploded. Not mortars. Breaching charges. Someone had gotten close enough to place satchel charges on the HESCO barriers, and when they blew, the concussion knocked soldiers off their feet. Through the gap came shapes. Insurgents, moving fast, rifles up, executing a textbook assault. They'd done this before. Trained for it. Waited for it. Knox moved. She rolled to her knees, brought her rifle up, and started shooting. Not panic fire, not suppression. Precision shooting in the middle of a close-quarters gunfight, each round placed like she had all the time in the world. First fighter through the gap, center mass, dropped. Second fighter, headshot, down before he could acquire a target. Third and fourth came together. Knox put 2 in the first, transitioned, 2 in the second, and they collapsed like marionettes with cut strings. Cole was running now, Torres beside him, both of them converging on the breach. Other soldiers were rallying, pouring fire into the gap, but Knox was holding the line by herself, a one-woman kill zone. An RPG team appeared at the breach, launcher already shouldered. Knox's rifle cracked. The gunner dropped. The assistant grabbed the launcher, tried to finish the shot. Knox shot him too. The rocket fired wild, screamed overhead, detonated somewhere in the valley. The backblast lit up the breach like a flashbulb. And through it came more fighters. Too many, pressing hard, trying to overwhelm through sheer volume. "Grenades!" Cole yelled, pulling one from his vest. Knox was faster. She already had one out, pin pulled, arm back. She threw it like a baseball pitcher, fast, accurate, right into the center of the breach. The explosion channeled through the gap, and the screaming started. Torres threw his grenade, then Chen. The breach became a kill box, and anyone inside it stopped being a threat. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. No more incoming fire, no more shouting, just the ringing in everyone's ears and the smell of cordite and copper. Cade emerged from the radio bunker, face blackened with soot. "Sound off! Casualties!" The count came back. 3 wounded, none critical. 1 guard tower destroyed. Southern wall breached but held. Enemy casualties, 14 confirmed KYA, all at the breach. Knox stood slowly, ejecting her magazine, checking the round count, reloading. Her hands didn't shake. Her breathing was normal. She could have been at a range. Cade walked over to her. "Specialist." She looked at him. "How did you know?" The mortars were too accurate for indirect fire. Someone was walking them onto target, which meant forward observer with line of sight. I glassed the ridgeline, found thermal signatures. Someone was watching us from the south. Then I saw the vehicle tracks. Fresh. Heavy. Assault team staging. It's textbook. Textbook for who? She didn't answer. Cade's jaw worked. He was putting it together, the file, the redactions, the shooting, the tactical awareness that belonged to someone with a lot more experience than her uniform suggested. "You knew they were coming." "I suspected." And you didn't tell me until they were 90 seconds out. Would you have believed me earlier? He wanted to argue. Cole could see it. But honesty won. No, Cade said quietly. I wouldn't have. Knox nodded, like she'd expected that answer. For the record, sir, they're not done. This was reconnaissance in force. They wanted to see how we react, what our response time is, where our weak points are. The real attack is still coming. When? She looked at the sky, false dawn bleeding gray across the horizon. When we're tired, when we think it's over, when our guard is down. She walked away, leaving Cade standing in the wreckage of his assumptions. The sun rose on a FOB that looked like it had been through a blender. Shredded HESCO barriers, burn marks, blood trails leading into the desert where the enemy had dragged away their dead. Engineers worked on the southern breach. Medics treated the wounded. Soldiers drank coffee that tasted like defeat and tried not to think about the next time. Cole found Knox on the northern perimeter, glass up, watching the valley. You should get some sleep, he said. So should you, Sergeant. I'm old. I don't sleep anymore. She almost smiled. Almost. He sat beside her. Back there, at the breach. That wasn't Signal Corps training. No. That was door kicking, close quarters battle, the kind of stuff they teach at special operations schools. She lowered her binos, looked at him. Your point? My point is someone sent you here knowing exactly what you can do, and I'm trying to figure out if that's a blessing or a curse. She considered that. Maybe both. You think they're really coming back? I know they are. They've invested too much in this. The planning, the coordination, the resources. This isn't about taking an FOB. This is about making a statement, proving they can do it. And you think you can stop them? I think I'm going to try. Cole studied her profile. The sharp angles, the stillness, the weight she carried like a cross. What happened to your team in the mountains? They died. Not all of them. The file said you brought people out. 5 out of 17. Her voice was flat. I carried 2, dragged 3, left 9 in the snow because I couldn't carry them all. That's not your fault, isn't it? She looked at him, and for the first time he saw past the mask. Saw the girl underneath, the one who'd made impossible choices and lived with them ever since. I was the one who took command. I was the one who made the call. Every death after that point is mine. You saved 5. I failed 12. That's not how math works. That's exactly how it works. She stood, shouldered her rifle. Get some sleep, Sergeant. We're going to need it. She walked away, and Cole sat there in the rising heat, understanding now why they'd buried her. Some weapons are too dangerous to use. Some are too dangerous not to. Lieutenant Cade sat alone in his office with a secure phone in his hand, wondering which rule he was about to break. Outside, the FOB bustled with repair work and denial. Inside, he stared at Knox's file and the phone number written in the margin. No name, no unit designation, just 10 digits and a handwritten note. In case of emergency. His hand hovered over the keypad. Whatever was coming, whatever Knox had seen in the desert shadows, he knew they weren't ready for it. Knew his platoon, for all their training and courage, was about to face something beyond their pay grade. And the only person who might be able to stop it was a weapon someone had tried very hard to lock away. He dialed. The line clicked. A voice answered. No greeting, no identification. Sand Viper is active? The voice asked. Cade's mouth went dry. You knew she was here. We counted on it. Why? Because what's coming needs someone who doesn't hesitate. Someone who doesn't wait for permission. The line went dead. Cade set the phone down with shaking hands, and through his window he saw Knox standing watch on the perimeter, silhouetted against the dawn, looking for all the world like a soldier waiting for a war she'd already lost once before. The secure phone stayed silent for the rest of the morning, but its presence on Cade's desk felt like a live grenade. He'd made the call, broken protocol, contacted a number that officially didn't exist about a soldier who officially wasn't supposed to be there. And the voice on the other end had confirmed his worst fear. This wasn't an accident. Knox's presence at FOB Rattlesnake was deliberate, orchestrated by people who operated above his clearance level. He tried to focus on the repair work, damage assessments, casualty reports, resupply requests, but his eyes kept drifting to the window where Knox maintained her vigil on the perimeter. She hadn't moved in 2 hours, hadn't eaten, hadn't taken a break. Just stood there scanning the valley like she could see the future written in heat, shimmer, and shadow. Chen knocked and entered without waiting. "Sir, we've got a problem." "Add it to the list." "Morale's tanking. Half the platoon thinks we should pull back to Kandahar. The other half thinks we're already dead and just don't know it yet." Cade rubbed his eyes. "What do you think?" "I think whoever's out there is playing chess while we're playing checkers. And I think the only person who knows the game is the one we've been treating like a secretary." "Yeah." Cade stood, grabbed his rifle. "Let's fix that." He found Knox exactly where he'd left her, binos up, scanning sectors with mechanical precision. She didn't acknowledge his approach. "Specialist, we need to talk." "Go ahead, sir." "Not here. My office." She lowered the binos, looked at him. Something passed across her face. Calculation, maybe, or resignation. "Am I being relieved?" "That depends on the next 5 minutes." In his office, Cade closed the door and gestured to a chair. Knox remained standing. "Sit down, specialist." "I'm good standing, sir." "That wasn't a request." She sat, spine straight, hands on her knees, eyes forward. Perfect military bearing, completely devoid of comfort. Cade opened her file, spread the redacted pages across his desk. "I'm going to ask you questions. You're going to answer them honestly. If you lie to me, I'll have you on the first bird back to Kandahar. Are we clear?" "Clear, sir." "Who sent you here?" "I volunteered, sir." "Bullshit. Signal Corps doesn't volunteer for FOBs, especially not specialists with files that look like Swiss cheese. Someone put you here." "Who?" She met his eyes. "I don't know their names. I don't know their unit. I got orders. I followed them." "From who?" "A colonel, maybe. He didn't wear a name tape." Cade felt his jaw tighten. "You're telling me a ghost colonel gave you orders to deploy to an active combat zone despite your file explicitly saying you're admin duty only?" "Yes, sir." "Why?" "You'd have to ask him, sir." "I'm asking you." For a long moment she said nothing. Then, "Because they knew something was coming. Something big enough that they needed someone who wouldn't hesitate when the time came." "Hesitate to do what?" "Whatever needs doing." Cade wanted to throw something. Instead, he pulled out the secure phone, set it on the desk between them. "You know what this is?" She glanced at it. "Yes, sir." "The number was in your file. I called it. Someone answered. Someone who knew your call sign before I said a word." Knox's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes went very still. "What did they say?" she asked quietly. "They asked if Sand Viper was active. Then they said what's coming needs someone who doesn't wait for permission." He leaned forward. "So here's what you're going to do. You're going to tell me what the hell is coming, who you really are, and why I shouldn't put you on a helicopter right now." She was quiet for so long he thought she'd refuse to answer. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight that made him think of old battlefields and older ghosts. 3 months ago, Signals Intelligence picked up chatter about a major offensive. Not Taliban, something new. Foreign fighters, professional training, advanced weapons. They're calling it Operation Red Horizon. The goal is to overrun a coalition FOB, hold it long enough to film propaganda, then disappear before air support can respond. Cade's blood went cold. "We're the target." FOB Rattlesnake checks all the boxes: remote, under strength, symbolic value. The valley gives them cover for staging. The ridgelines give them observation. And our patrol patterns are predictable enough that they've had 3 weeks to wargame every scenario. "How do you know this?" "Because I read the same intelligence reports you didn't get. Because someone higher up the chain decided this FOB was worth using as bait." She paused. "And because they sent me here to make sure the bait doesn't get eaten." The room felt smaller suddenly. Cade's hands had gone numb. "You're not Signal Corps." "No, sir." "You're not even regular army anymore, are you?" "Not officially, sir." "Then what are you?" She looked at him with eyes that had seen things he hoped he'd never have to. I'm what's left when you train someone to kill and then try to teach them to stop. Outside, the FOB buzzed with afternoon heat and mounting tension. Soldiers worked on the breach repairs with the frantic energy of men who knew the clock was ticking. Cole supervised a detail filling HESCO barriers while Torres and Gomez, arm-bandaged but mobile, reinforced fighting positions. Knox emerged from Cade's office looking no different than when she'd entered, but Cole had been doing this long enough to read the aftermath of hard conversations. Whatever had been said in there, it had changed something. She walked straight to the TOC, pulled out a notebook, and began sketching. Not doodling, planning, combat graphics, range cards, fields of fire. Cole wandered over. Lieutenant have a come to Jesus with you? Something like that. You get read the riot act? Not exactly. She looked up. Sergeant, if I asked you to help me do something the lieutenant hasn't officially authorized, would you? Warning bells went off in Cole's head. Depends on what it is. I need to run a night patrol, just 2 people. Recon the southern ridgeline, confirm some things I saw during the attack. That's a terrible idea. I know. We'd be outside the wire with no support, no backup, and if we get hit, there's no QRF that can reach us in time. I know that too. Cole studied her. But you're going anyway. Yes. With or without help. Preferably with, but yes. He sighed. When? Tonight, 0200. Moon's down, thermal conditions are optimal. For getting killed. For not being seen. She went back to her sketching. I need to know if I'm right about what's coming. If I am, we have maybe 48 hours to prepare. If I'm wrong, you get to say I told you so. And if you're right? She didn't answer, didn't need to. At 1800, the platoon gathered for chow in the DFAC, a glorified tent with folding tables and food that tasted like regret. Knox sat alone in the corner, methodically working through an MRE when Torres and Gomez approached with trays. Mind if we sit? Torres asked. She looked up, surprised. Free country. They sat. For a moment, nobody spoke, the silence awkward and heavy. Look, Torres said finally, about the other day, the shit we said, that was... Forget it, Knox cut in. No, let me finish. He set down his fork. We were assholes. We judged you before we knew anything about you, and then you saved our lives, twice, so I'm saying thank you, and I'm sorry. Gomez nodded. What he said? That shooting at the breach. I've never seen anything like it. Knox didn't know how to respond to that. Apologies weren't something she'd factored into her tactical planning. You don't have to. Where'd you learn to shoot like that? Gomez pressed. For real, not the bullshit cover story. She considered lying, considered deflecting. Instead, she said, a place where they teach you to solve problems that can't be solved any other way. Sniper school? Something like that. Torres whistled low. No wonder they sent you to us. We're the island of misfit toys out here. Misfit toys with guns, Gomez added. The best kind. Despite herself, Knox felt something crack. Not her composure, exactly, but the isolation she'd been maintaining like armor. You should eat, she said. Food's going to get cold. It's already cold, Torres said. MREs don't have temperatures, they have suggestions. Gomez laughed, and the sound was so normal, so human in the middle of all this death and waiting, that Knox almost forgot why she was there. Almost. On getting shot? Cole asked. Planning 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 on not being seen. Famous last words. They moved to the north gate, least likely to be observed, and slipped through a personnel door that squeaked like a rusty hinge. The desert swallowed them immediately. Knox led, moving with the kind of fieldcraft that came from repetition and survival. She avoided the obvious routes, stuck to dead ground, paused frequently to listen. Cole followed, trying to match her rhythm, and failing. The valley at night was a different world, cold where the day had been furnace hot, silent except for wind and the occasional distant bark of a dog. The stars overhead were so bright they cast shadows. They moved south for 30 minutes, climbing gradually toward the ridgeline. Knox stopped every 100 meters to glass the terrain ahead, checking for sentries, tripwires, anything that suggested human presence. At the base of the ridge, she went prone, motioned for Cole to do the same. Together they crawled the last 50 meters, using rocks and scrub for concealment. The observation post was exactly where Knox said it would be, a shallow depression with a commanding view of the FOB, ringed with rocks, the ground disturbed by recent occupation. Empty now, but the evidence was clear: cigarette butts, crushed grass, scuff marks from boots. And something else. Knox pulled out a red lens flashlight, swept it across the ground. Spent brass, 7.62 by 54 millimeters, Russian manufacture. A prayer rug, neatly folded. And in the dirt, scratched with a stick or knife, a symbol that made Cole's stomach drop. 3 crescents arranged in a triangle. "What is that?" he whispered. Markings used by Chechen foreign fighters. Highly trained, highly motivated, and very good at what they do. She took photos with a digital camera, documenting everything. "They've been here multiple times, watching us, learning our routines." "How many?" "Based on the foot traffic? At least a platoon-sized element, maybe more." Cole did the math in his head. A platoon meant 30 to 40 fighters, possibly with crew-served weapons, RPGs, maybe even mortars. Against their undermanned FOB, it was a massacre waiting to happen. "We need to call this in," he said. "To who? Battalion? They'll want evidence we don't have. They'll want confirmation from multiple sources. They'll want to form a committee and have a meeting about whether to have a meeting." She stood, began photographing sightlines to the FOB. By the time they decide to take it seriously, it'll be too late. So what do? We prepare, quietly, without waiting for permission. There it was again, that phrase, the one that had gotten her buried the first time. They were about to leave when Knox froze. Voices, distant, coming from the north, speaking a language Cole didn't recognize, not Pashto, not Arabic, Russian, maybe, or something close. Knox dropped flat, pulled Cole down beside her. They pressed into the rocks, barely breathing. Two figures crested the ridge 50 meters away, fighters, armed, moving with tactical spacing. They were heading straight for the observation post. Knox's hand moved to her rifle. Cole could see her finger slide onto the trigger guard, ready but not committed. The fighters reached the OP, knelt, began examining the ground. One of them said something, pointing at the disturbed dirt where Knox and Cole had crawled. The other laughed, a sound without humor. They knew someone had been here. Knox's breathing slowed. Cole recognized it. The pre-shot calm, the moment before violence. She was going to kill them both, had already done the geometry in her head, calculated the angles and timing. Her finger moved to the trigger, then stopped. She looked at Cole, and he saw the war happening behind her eyes. The tactical calculus was clear. Eliminate the threat, maintain surprise, prevent warning. But doing so would announce their presence, trigger the very response they were trying to avoid. Kill 2 now or save 23 later. The fighters stood, shouldered their rifles, and continued south along the ridgeline, away from the FOB, away from Knox and Cole. Knox's finger came off the trigger. They waited until the voices faded completely, then waited another 10 minutes. Then, moving like shadows themselves, they crept back down the ridge and into the valley. Neither spoke until they were back inside the wire, the gate secured behind them. "You should have shot them," Cole said quietly. "I know. They saw the tracks. They know someone was there." I know that too. So why didn't you?" She looked at him, and for the first time since he'd met her, he saw uncertainty in her face. "Because I'm tired of making the easy choice." Dawn found Cade in the TOC, staring at Knox's photograph spread across the table like evidence at a trial. The symbol, the brass, the sight lines. Everything pointed to the same conclusion Knox had already reached. They were being set up for a slaughter. Cole stood beside him, still in his night patrol gear, exhaustion written across his face. "This is actionable intelligence," Cade said. "We need to send it up the chain. Knox thinks they'll bury it." "She's probably right." Cade picked up one of the photos, the 3 crescents scratched in the dirt. "But we have to try. Protocol exists for a reason. So does survival." Cade's jaw tightened. He was caught between the rock of regulation and the hard place of reality, and Cole could see him grinding on it. "Where is she now?" Cade asked. "Last I saw, running the perimeter again." "She ever sleep?" "Not that I've noticed." Cade set down the photo. "All right. I'll send it up. But we start preparing anyway, quietly. Reinforce the weak points. Pre-position ammunition. Run contingency drills. If Knox is right and the brass ignores it, I want to be ready. And if she's wrong, then we wasted some time and effort. I'll take that bet." By midday, the FOB had transformed into controlled chaos. Engineers reinforced the southern breach with triple-layered HESCO barriers and concertina wire. Ammunition bearers pre-staged extra belts for the Ma Deuces. Mortar teams ran firing solutions for every grid square within 3 kilometers. And Knox moved through it all like a ghost, offering suggestions that sounded like observations but carried the weight of hard experience. "The guard tower's a death trap and sustained fire. Put a 2-man team in a fighting hole instead, give them a radio and thermals. That ammo cache is too centralized. One lucky hit and we lose everything. Spread it across 3 positions. Your mortar pit has no overhead cover. First counter-battery fire, you lose your indirect." Cade listened to every recommendation, implemented most of them. Soldiers who'd mocked her 3 days ago now sought her input like she was an oracle. But Torres noticed something else. "She's running herself into the ground," he told Cole. "When's the last time she slept?" "Honestly, I don't know. Someone should make her rest." "You volunteer?" Torres thought about that. "Hell no, she scares me." Smart man. That afternoon, Knox was running range cards when Chen approached with a radio handset. Specialist, you've got a call. Encrypted channel. She took the handset, keyed it. Knox. The voice on the other end was the same one Cade had heard, neutral, unidentifiable, carrying authority that didn't need to announce itself. Sand Viper, status report. Knox walked away from the others, found a quiet corner. Position is compromised. Enemy has conducted multiple reconnaissance efforts. Assessment. Assault imminent, likely within 48 hours. Your recommendation? Evacuate the FOB. Reposition to defensible terrain. Deny them the propaganda victory. Denied. FOB, Rattlesnake, stays operational. Knox felt something cold settle in her chest. Then you're sacrificing everyone here. We're using available assets to achieve strategic objectives. Your job is to ensure those objectives are met. My job is to keep people alive. Your job is whatever we tell you it is. The operation proceeds as planned. You have your orders. The line went dead. Knox stood there holding the handset, feeling the weight of inevitability pressing down like atmosphere. They'd known all along. Known the FOB was bait. Known soldiers would die. And they'd sent her here not to prevent it, but to manage it. To make sure the body count stayed within acceptable parameters. She thought about the mountain, the snow, the choices that had broken her. Thought about doing it all again. No, she said to the empty air. Boss. She found Cade in his office, drafting a message to battalion. Sir, we need to talk. He looked up, saw her face, and set down his pen. What happened? I just got a call. Same people who sent me here. I recommended evacuation. They denied it. On what grounds? They didn't give grounds. They gave orders. She sat down without asking. Sir, we're being used. This FOB, the platoon, you and me, we're bait for an operation that goes higher than either of us can see. And when the shooting starts, we're expendable. Cade's face went through several emotions, disbelief, anger, resignation, before settling on grim determination. How sure are you? Completely. And you're telling me this why? You could just follow orders, do your job, let it play out. I could. She met his eyes. But I'm done being a weapon. If we're going to fight, we fight on our terms, not theirs. That's insubordination. I'm familiar with the concept. Despite everything, Cade almost smiled. What do you propose? Knox pulled out her notebook, opened it to a page covered in tactical graphics and calculations. We can't evacuate. We can't call in reinforcements. They won't come. But we can control the battlefield, force them to fight our fight, not theirs. How? By giving them what they want in a way they don't expect. Ja. Over the next 24 hours, Knox and Cade worked in the kind of desperate partnership that forms when the only alternative is death. They couldn't trust the chain of command, couldn't trust air support to arrive on time, couldn't trust anything except the soldiers around them and the ammunition they had on hand. So they prepared for the worst. Knox ran the platoon through close-quarters drills, teaching them things that weren't in the manual. How to shoot and move in darkness, how to recognize the sound of incoming fire before it arrived, how to stay calm when everything was falling apart. This isn't about being heroes, she told them. Heroes get buried. This is about staying alive long enough to see tomorrow. What if tomorrow doesn't come? Gomez asked. Then you make the bastards pay for it. The soldiers responded. Not because they trusted her, trust took time they didn't have, but because she spoke the language of survival. And survival was all that mattered. Cade watched from the TOC, seeing his platoon transform from a collection of individuals into something harder, sharper, more dangerous. She's good at this, Chen observed. She's had practice, Cade said quietly. How much practice? More than anyone should. That night, Cole found Knox on the perimeter again. Always the perimeter, always watching. You ever think about what happens after? He asked. After what? After we survive this. If we survive this. She lowered her binos. I try not to think that far ahead. Why not? Because hope is a liability in my line of work. Cole sat on a HESCO barrier. That's bleak. That's realistic. She glanced at him. You have family, Sergeant? Wife, 2 kids, boy, and a girl. What are their names? Why? Because when the shooting starts, I need you thinking about them. Not about being brave, not about medals, just about getting home to see them again. Cole felt something tighten in his chest. What about you? What do you think about? Knox was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice carried ghosts. I think about the people I couldn't save, and I promise myself I'll do better this time. The call came at 0300. Not over the radio, not through official channels. A soldier on watch saw movement on the southern ridge. Lots of it. Vehicles, personnel. The kind of staging that preceded an assault. Cade sounded the alarm. The FOB exploded into activity, soldiers rolling out of cots, grabbing weapons, sprinting to positions. The drills Knox had run paid off immediately. There was no panic, no confusion, just muscle memory and purpose. Knox was already in the TOC when Cade arrived, headset on, coordinating sectors. Multiple thermal signatures south and east, vehicle-mounted weapons. Estimate 40-plus personnel. They're not hiding anymore. Time to contact? 30 minutes. Maybe less. Cade grabbed the radio to battalion. Rattlesnake TOC to Dragon 6. We have imminent contact. Request immediate air support and QRF. How copy? Static. Then, Dragon 6 copies. Be advised, air assets are engaged in supportive operations in Helmand Province. ETA to your location unknown. Unknown. Might as well have said never. Request QRF. QRF is standing by. Will deploy upon confirmation of contact. Confirmation of contact. Meaning they had to get shot at first. Cade slammed down the handset. Knox looked at him. We're on our own. Yeah. Good. She stood, checked her rifle. Then we don't have to ask permission. What? The attack began with mortars. Of course it did. 3 tubes, walking fire across the FOB with mathematical precision. The enemy had ranged everything during their reconnaissance. Now they were just executing a plan. Explosions tore through the night. Soldiers hunkered in fighting positions, returning fire at muzzle flashes they could barely see. The southern and eastern perimeters lit up with automatic weapons fire. Disciplined, controlled, professional. These weren't insurgents. These were soldiers. Knox moved through the chaos like she'd been born in it, directing fire, repositioning teams, identifying threats before they materialized. She'd abandoned the TOC, too static, too slow, and now operated from wherever she was needed most. An RPG team appeared on the eastern ridge. Knox saw them, called it out, and 3 soldiers shifted fire simultaneously. The RPG gunner dropped before he could shoot. A technical truck tried to flank from the south. Knox directed mortar fire onto its approach, and the truck dissolved in a fireball that painted everyone orange. But there were too many of them, too many angles, too much incoming fire. We can't hold all the sectors, Chen screamed over the radio. Knox made a decision that would have gotten her court-martialed 6 months ago. Then we don't hold them all. Pull back from the eastern perimeter, consolidate on the south and west, give them the east. That's retreat, Cade shouted. That's tactics. They want to overrun us. Let them think they can. Cade hesitated. 1 second, 2 seconds. Then made the call. All elements, execute fallback to secondary positions. Maintain fire discipline. The platoon pulled back in controlled fashion, abandoning the eastern fighting holes but maintaining devastating fire from the new positions. The enemy, seeing the withdrawal, surged forward, exactly as Knox predicted. They poured into the eastern sector, thinking they'd broken through, and walked straight into a kill zone. Knox had pre-positioned claymore mines, interlocking fields of fire, and a mortar team with pre-plotted coordinates. When she gave the word, the eastern sector turned into a slaughterhouse. The enemy assault broke, scattered, fell back in disorder. But they weren't done. A second wave hit the southern breach, larger, better coordinated, with suppressing fire that forced defenders to keep their heads down. Satchel charges blew gaps in the wire. Fighters poured through. Knox saw it developing, saw the moment the line would break, and made another choice. She grabbed Torres and Gomez. With me, CQB sweep. We push them back before they establish a foothold. That's suicide, Torres said. That's the job. They went. 4 soldiers, Knox, Torres, Gomez, and Chen, moving through smoke and darkness, engaging targets at bad breath distance. Room-clearing tactics in open ground, the most dangerous kind of fighting. Knox led, rifle up, shooting anything that moved, and was an American. She moved like water, flowing from cover to cover, never stopping, never hesitating. Behind her, the others tried to keep up. A fighter rose from behind a Hesco. Knox shot him twice. Another appeared from smoke. Gomez dropped him. A third tried to throw a grenade. Torres shot his arm off. They pushed forward, reclaimed the breach meter by meter, left bodies in their wake. And then Knox saw it. The real assault. The main effort. A BTR armored personnel carrier rolling up the valley road, turret traversing, 14.5mm machine gun seeking targets. Behind it, another wave of fighters, using the vehicle for cover. That gun would tear through their positions like paper. Knox grabbed her radio. TOC, I need AT support on the southern road grid. Negative, Cade responded. Javelin team is down, launcher damaged. No anti-tank weapons. No air support. No way to stop an armored vehicle except Knox looked at the mortar pit, looked at the BTR. Did math that didn't add up. Unless. She sprinted for the pit, sliding in beside the gunner. How many rounds left? 4 HE, 2 illumination. Load HE. Max charge. I'll call corrections. The gunner stared at her. You're going to direct fire a mortar at an armored vehicle. You got a better idea? He loaded the round. Knox climbed onto the Hesco, exposed herself to incoming fire, brought up her monocular. The BTR was 300 meters out and closing. She calculated windage, elevation, leading distance. Gun up, the gunner shouted. Fire! The mortar coughed. The round arced high, too high she'd overcalculated, and came down 50 meters beyond the BTR. Drop 50, fire for effect. Second round. This one landed 20 meters short, showering the BTR with shrapnel, but not stopping it. The turret swung toward her position. Up 30, right 10. Third round. Direct hit. The mortar shell struck the BTR's engine deck, and the vehicle erupted in flames. Secondary explosions cooked off ammunition, and the fighters using it for cover scattered. Knox dropped back into the pit, breathing hard, ears ringing. The gunner looked at her with something between awe and terror. Where the hell did you learn to shoot mortars like that? YouTube, she deadpanned. Despite everything, he laughed. Done. The assault broke. The enemy, having lost their armored support and taken devastating casualties, melted back into the darkness. Sporadic fire continued for another 20 minutes, then stopped. Silence fell. Cade emerged from the TOC, surveyed the damage. Bodies, most of them enemy, some of them not. Burning vehicles, shredded barriers. The price of survival paid in brass and blood. Casualties? He called. The count came back. 4 KIA, 9 wounded, 2 critical. Enemy casualties. At least 30 confirmed, probably more in the darkness beyond the wire. The FOB had held. Barely. Knox sat against a barrier, drinking from her camelback with shaking hands. The adrenaline was fading now, leaving behind exhaustion so profound it felt like gravity had doubled. Cole found her there. You all right? Ask me tomorrow. That was some shooting. The BTR. I didn't think that was possible. Neither did I. She looked at him. Lucky. Luck my ass. That was skill. She didn't argue. That didn't have the energy. Cade approached and both soldiers stood on instinct. As you were. He sat down beside Knox. For a moment he said nothing, just stared at the burning BTR. I sent your recommendation up the chain, he said finally. Evacuation, reinforcement, everything. Want to know what they said? Knox didn't answer. They said good work, maintain position, continue mission, like we're lab rats in an experiment. He looked at her. You were right. We're bait. I know. And you stayed anyway. Where else would I go? Cade stood, looked down at her. When he spoke, his voice carried something new, not quite respect, but the beginning of it. That thing you did tonight, taking tactical control, making calls without authorization, that's the same thing that got you buried before, isn't it? Yes, sir. But it also saved lives. This time. That's all any of us can hope for. This time. He offered his hand. Thank you, Specialist. She shook it, surprised by the gesture. Get some rest, Cade said. This isn't over. They'll be back. He walked away, leaving Knox and Cole in the smoking aftermath. How long? Cole asked. Until they hit us again? Knox stared at the horizon where dawn was just beginning to threaten. 48 hours, maybe less. They'll reinforce, adapt, come back harder. Can we hold? She thought about the mountain, the snow, the impossible choices. Thought about doing it right this time. We're going to have to. Dawn broke over FOB Rattlesnake like a forensic photographer's flash, harsh, clinical, exposing everything. Smoke drifted from burned-out vehicles. Blood had soaked into the sand, turning it the color of rust. The eastern perimeter looked like someone had taken a giant rake to it, leaving furrows of destruction and empty brass casings that glinted in the early light. Knox hadn't slept. Couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the BTR's turret swinging toward her, felt the breath of the 14.5-millimeter rounds passing overhead, heard the screams of soldiers who hadn't been fast enough, or lucky enough, or both. She sat in the TOC now, surrounded by maps and radio equipment, and the smell of stale coffee, plotting fields of fire and kill zones with the mechanical precision of someone who'd done this before. Too many times before. Cade entered carrying 2 cups of something that vaguely resembled coffee. He set one in front of her. You look like hell, he said. Feel worse. When's the last time you slept? What day is it? He sat across from her, studying the maps she'd marked up. Red circles for enemy staging areas, blue squares for defensive positions, black X's where soldiers had died. The geometry of violence, rendered in grease pencil and hope. Battalion finally sent a response, Cade said. Want to hear it? Knox didn't look up from her work. Let me guess. Well done. Maintain position. Air support still unavailable. Close. Well done. Maintain position. Reinforcements inbound in 72 hours. That made her look up. 72 hours. 3 days. If we can hold that long, they'll rotate us out. Bring in a full company. 3 days. Knox laughed, a sound without humor. They've got a twisted sense of optimism. Can we do it? She looked at the maps, the casualty reports, the ammunition count that was starting to look dangerously low. Did the math in her head. It didn't add up. Not the way we're fighting now, she said finally. We're reacting, defending, letting them choose when and where. We keep that up, they'll grind us down through attrition. So what do you suggest? Knox stood, walked to the map board, stared at the valley like she could see through the paper to the terrain beyond. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of decisions she'd made once before and paid for ever since. We stop defending. We go on offense. Cade set down his coffee. Explain. They're staging from the Southern Ridge complex. We know that from the OP we found. They're using the Wadi systems for covered approaches. They've got supply lines running through the valley floor, probably from a cache site east of here. All of that requires infrastructure, coordination, time. And we deny them all 3. We hit their staging areas, destroy their cache sites, force them to fight on our timeline instead of theirs. With what force? We're down to 19 effective soldiers. We send people outside the wire. We weaken our defensive posture even more. Knox turned to face him. Sir, our defensive posture is already compromised. They know our strength, our positions, our capabilities. Every hour we sit here, they're adapting, planning, bringing in more resources. We either change the equation or we die slowly. Cade wanted to argue. She could see it in his face, the West Point training, the doctrine, the weight of regulation, and good order. But she could also see something else. The understanding that conventional wisdom was written by people who'd never had to defend an undermanned FOB against professional fighters with nothing to lose. You're talking about a raid, he said. I'm talking about survival. Same thing, isn't it? Not always. He stood, paced the small room, hands behind his back. Officer thinking. Finally, what's your plan? Knox pulled out her notebook, pages filled with patrol routes, timing windows, terrain analysis. She'd been working on this for hours, gaming out scenarios, calculating odds that weren't in their favor, but were better than doing nothing. Small team, 4 operators. Hit the cache site at dusk. That's their vulnerable window, after they've staged supplies but before they've dispersed for the assault. Destroy what we can, disrupt what we can't, and get out before they can respond in force. 4 operators against how many hostiles? Unknown, but surprise is a force multiplier, and we won't be there to fight. We'll be there to break things. Who goes? Knox met his eyes. Me, Cole, Torres, Chen. That's my senior NCO and my best soldiers. That's the point. This isn't a job for second string. But Cade studied her, and she could see him wrestling with it. The risk, the reward, the terrible mathematics of command where every decision costs someone something. If this goes wrong, he said quietly, if you get pinned down out there, I can't help you. No QRF, no air support. You'll be on your own. I'm familiar with the concept, sir. He almost smiled. Almost. When? Tonight, 1900 hours, in and out before full dark. And if they hit the FOB while you're gone? Then Gomez commands the defense. He's good enough. She paused. Sir, they're not going to hit us tonight. They took significant casualties yesterday. They need time to regroup, reinforce, plan. We've got a window, probably 12 to 18 hours. After that, all bets are off. Cade was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something that surprised them both. He extended his hand. Good hunting, specialist. She shook it. Thank you, sir. Cole took the news about how Knox expected, which is to say he looked at her like she'd suggested they juggle live grenades while blindfolded. You want to do what now? Raid their cache site, destroy their supplies, give them something to think about besides killing us. They stood outside the TOC, morning heat already building, while around them soldiers worked on repairs with the exhausted determination of people who knew the work would never be finished. That's insane, Cole said. That's tactics. Same thing from where I'm standing. He took off his helmet, wiped sweat from his forehead. You really think 4 people can pull this off? 4 good people, yes. And you consider me good people? I consider you someone who understands that sometimes the crazy option is the only option. He couldn't argue with that. What's the plan? Knox unfolded a map, spread it on the hood of a HMM Dubjevi. Cache site is here, 3 clicks southeast. Intel from the captured radio traffic puts it in a Wadi junction. Good cover from air, multiple egress routes, accessible by vehicle. We approach from the west, use this ridge for concealment, get eyes on the site before committing. And if it's heavily guarded, then we abort and come home. But you don't think it will be. I think they're arrogant. They hit us hard, we barely survived, so they assume we're locked down and defensive. They're not expecting us to come to them. Cole studied the map, tracing potential routes, identifying choke points and danger areas. 30 years of infantry experience told him this was a terrible idea. 30 years of staying alive told him Knox was probably right. Who else? He asked. Torres and Chen. Both solid, both can shoot, both can keep their heads when things get stupid. You mean stupider than raiding an enemy cache site with 4 people? Exactly. Despite himself, Cole grinned. When do we leave? At 1700, the 4 of them gathered in the armory, a plywood shack that smelled like gun oil and determination. Knox had assembled a kit that would make a minimalist weep with joy. Rifles, sidearms, demolitions, water, ammunition. Nothing else. Torres hefted a block of C4. How much boom are we bringing? Enough to ruin their day, Knox said. Not enough to announce our presence to everyone in the valley. So, medium boom. Exactly. Chen checked his rifle for the 3rd time, nervous energy that needed an outlet. What's our exfil plan if this goes sideways? We run very fast in the opposite direction. That's not a plan. It's the only plan that matters when you're outnumbered and outgunned. Cole intervened before the conversation could spiral. Listen up. We're not going out there to be heroes. We're going to hit fast, break things, and get home in time for chow. Understood? 3 voices. Understood. Knox has tactical control on this op. What she says goes, no questions, no hesitation. Anyone have a problem with that? Silence. Not the comfortable kind, the kind that came from soldiers accepting reality they didn't particularly like but couldn't change. Good, Cole said. Lock and load. We step off in 30 minutes. They left through the north gate again, slipping out in the fading light like ghosts with rifles. The valley had transformed in the golden hour, shadows lengthening, heat easing, the desert preparing for another freezing night. Knox led, moving with the kind of confidence that came from muscle memory and repetition. Behind her, Cole, Torres, and Chen spread out in tactical spacing, weapons up, scanning sectors. They moved in silence, hand signals only, the language of operators who'd done this dance before, even if not together. The terrain shifted from flat desert to broken ground, wadis and ridgelines, rocks and scrub, the kind of geography that hid armies and swallowed the unwary. Knox navigated it like she had a map tattooed on her brain, never hesitating, never second-guessing. After 2 clicks, she raised a fist. Stop. They went prone, and Knox pulled out her monocular, glassed the terrain ahead. The cache site sat exactly where she'd predicted. A confluence of 3 wadis, natural cover on all sides, vehicle tracks leading in and out. And supplies. Lots of them. Ammunition crates stacked under camouflage netting, fuel drums arranged in neat rows. Mortar rounds, RPGs. Enough material to sustain a week-long siege, and guards. 4 of them visible. Probably more she couldn't see. Knox passed the monocular to Cole. He glassed the site, whistled softly. That's more hardware than I expected, he whispered. That's the point. They're planning something big. How do we get close without being seen? Knox pointed to a wadi that curved around the site's western edge. That gives us a covered approach to within 50 meters. We place charges on the fuel drums. They go up, everything else goes with them. Then we disappear before they know what hit them. And the guards? We avoid them if we can, eliminate them if we can't. Torres shifted uncomfortably. 4 guards we can see. How many we can't? Unknown, but we're about to find out. They moved into the wadi, using its depth for concealment, placing each step with the care of people walking through a minefield. The sun was dying now, painting the sky in shades of blood and warning. 50 meters from the cache site, Knox halted them. She hand-signaled. Torres and Chen would provide overwatch from this position. She and Cole would move forward, place the charges, return. Torres nodded, found a firing position that gave him good angles on the site. Chen did the same, rifle up, scanning for threats. Knox and Cole moved forward alone. The last 50 meters took 10 minutes, crawling, freezing when guards looked their way, breathing shallow, hearts hammering. The kind of movement that turned seconds into hours and made you question every life choice that led to this moment. They reached the fuel drums. Knox pulled out blocks of C4, began placing them while Cole covered, rifle tracking guards, finger on the trigger. One guard walked toward them, close enough that Knox could hear him humming. She froze, hand on her sidearm, calculating distances and angles. If he saw them, she'd have to kill him quietly, which would alert the others, which would trigger the very firefight they were trying to avoid. The guard stopped 3 meters away, lit a cigarette, stood there smoking, completely unaware that death sat in the shadows 6 feet from him. Knox's hand stayed on her pistol. Cole's finger tightened on his trigger. The guard finished his cigarette, flicked the butt into the sand, walked away. Knox let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. She finished placing charges, 4 blocks total, enough to turn the fuel dump into a mushroom cloud. Then she set the timer, 5 minutes. Enough time to get clear. Not enough time for second thoughts. She tapped Cole's shoulder. Time to go. They crawled backward, retracing their path, every nerve screaming that they were about to be discovered, every second stretching like taffy. 4 minutes. They reached the wadi where Torres and Chen waited. 3 minutes. Move, Knox whispered, fast and quiet. They moved, pushing speed and stealth to their limits, putting distance between themselves and the cache site. 2 minutes. A shout behind them. Someone had found the charges. Run, Knox hissed. They ran, stealth abandoned, survival instinct taking over. Behind them, more shouting, the sound of guards mobilizing, weapons being charged. 1 minute. They crested a ridgeline, dropped behind it, pressed flat. The charges detonated. The explosion wasn't loud. It was a physical presence, a wave of pressure and heat that washed over them even at 200 meters. The fuel drums went up in a fireball that turned night into day, and then the sympathetic detonation started. Ammunition cooking off, mortar rounds exploding, RPGs launching in random directions. The cache site became a vision of hell, flames reaching toward the stars, secondary explosions rippling outward, screams of men caught too close. "Move now," Knox ordered. "They're going to be looking for us." They moved, using the chaos as cover, sprinting through terrain that had seemed impossible to navigate slowly. Behind them, the fire painted everything in orange and shadow. Gunfire erupted. Not aimed at them, just panic fire, guards shooting at ghosts in darkness. A round snapped past Cole's head, close enough to part his hair. They dove into a wadi, rolled, came up running. More gunfire. This time deliberate, calculated. Someone had spotted them. "Contact rear!" Chen yelled. Knox glanced back, saw muzzle flashes, figures moving in pursuit. At least 6 of them, maybe more. "Suppressing fire!" she ordered. Torres and Chen stopped, went prone, laid down controlled bursts that forced the pursuers to cover. Knox and Cole kept moving, found a position, turned, provided cover while the other 2 displaced. Leapfrog withdrawal. The most dangerous kind of retreat because it required discipline and trust, and the absolute certainty that the people covering you wouldn't abandon you. They bounded back toward the FOB, 2 moving while 2 fired, a deadly dance choreographed by necessity. An RPG streaked past, detonated against a rock formation. Shrapnel sang through the air. "They're trying to pin us," Cole shouted. "Don't let them." Knox returned fire, dropped 1 pursuer, then another. Beside her, Torres worked his rifle like a precision instrument, each shot deliberate, each one finding its mark. The pursuers hesitated, fell back, regrouped. Knox used the moment. "Move! All of us! Don't stop!" They ran, lungs burning, legs screaming, the FOB a beacon of light and safety still 2 clicks away. Behind them, the cache site continued to burn, and the sound of secondary explosions rolled across the valley like distant thunder. They stumbled through the north gate at 2015, covered in dust and sweat, and the kind of adrenaline crash that made your hands shake and your vision tunnel. Gomez was waiting with a medical kit. "Anyone hit?" "Negative," Cole gasped. "Just tired." Kate appeared, face grim. "Report." Knox straightened despite the exhaustion. "Cache site destroyed. Estimate 70% of their stored ammunition and fuel eliminated. They'll feel that for days." "Casualties?" "Unknown enemy, 0 friendly." "Pursuit?" "Broken off at the 1-click line. They didn't want to get close to your guns." Cade's expression shifted, not quite a smile, but close. "Well done. All of you." The 4 of them stood there, processing what they'd just survived, and Knox felt something she hadn't felt in months. The absence of failure. They'd gone out, done the job, come home. No body bags, no screaming wounded, just mission accomplished and soldiers still breathing. It felt foreign, suspicious, like the universe was setting her up for a harder fall. "Get cleaned up," Cade said. "Debrief in 30 minutes. I want every detail while it's still fresh." They dispersed, and Knox found herself standing alone in the compound, watching the orange glow on the southern horizon where their handiwork continued to burn. Cole approached with 2 bottles of water, handed her one. "That was a hell of a thing," he said. "That was necessary." "Think it bought us time?" "Maybe. 12 hours? Maybe 18. Then they'll come with everything they have left." "Will it be enough?" Knox drank half the bottle in one pull. "It'll have to be." The debrief lasted an hour, Kate asking questions, Knox providing answers, the others filling in details. Maps were annotated, timelines established, intelligence updated. When it was over, Cade dismissed everyone except Knox. "Stay a minute," he said. She stayed, wary, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Cade closed the door, sat on the edge of his desk. That operation. That wasn't something you planned this morning, was it? No, sir. You've been thinking about it since the first attack. Yes, sir. Because you knew we'd need options, contingencies, ways to fight back that don't depend on support that's never coming. That's part of it. What's the other part? Knox looked at him, debating how much truth he could handle, decided honesty was less dangerous than lies. The other part is, I've been in this situation before. Different terrain, different enemy, same equation. Undermanned position, no support, enemy closing in. I know how it ends if you just sit and wait. How does it end? Badly. Cade absorbed that. The mountain operation, that's what you're talking about. Yes, sir. You lost people. I lost most of them. But not all. No, sir. Not all. He studied her, really studied her, looking past the rank and the file and the regulation to see the person underneath. What he found there seemed to surprise him. You're not doing this for redemption, are you? He said quietly. Sir? This whole thing, volunteering to come here, running operations, putting yourself in harm's way. You're not trying to make up for what happened before. Knox thought about that, about the snow and the screaming and the choices that had broken something inside her that still hadn't healed. No, sir, she said finally. I'm trying to make sure it doesn't happen again. That's not your responsibility. With respect, sir, yes it is, because I know how to stop it, and knowing how but choosing not to makes me complicit. Cade nodded slowly, like she'd confirmed something he'd suspected. When this is over, assuming we survive, you're going to have to answer for the choices you've made, taking tactical control, running unsanctioned operations, breaking chain of command. I know. They might bury you again, deeper this time. I know that too. And you're okay with that? Knox met his eyes. Sir, I stopped being okay the day I put on this uniform. But being okay isn't the job. Keeping people alive is. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Cade stood, moved to the door, opened it. Get some rest, specialist. Tomorrow's going to be worse. How can you be sure? Because you were right. We've got maybe 12 hours before they hit us with everything they have left. And this time, they're not going to make the mistake of underestimating us. Boss. Knox tried to sleep, managed 3 hours in fitful increments, plagued by dreams of fire and snow and the faces of people she'd failed to save. She woke at 0400 to the sound of her own heartbeat and the certainty that today was the day everything fell apart or came together. She dressed, checked her rifle, and went to the perimeter. The desert before dawn was a study in absence. No light, no warmth, no comfort. Just cold and dark and waiting. Torres found her there, standing watch over nothing. Can't sleep either? He asked. Sleeping's overrated. That's what insomniacs tell themselves. She almost smiled. What are you doing up? Same as you, waiting for the other shoe to drop. He leaned against the barrier beside her. You really think they're coming today? I know they are. How? Because if I were them, I'd come today. We're tired. We're low on ammunition. We just poked them in the eye. Pride demands a response, and these guys, they're professional enough to let pride and tactics align. Torres was quiet for a moment, then, You know, when you first showed up, I thought you were just another pogey bait signal girl who'd somehow gotten lost and ended up here by mistake. I know. I was an idiot. You were uninformed. Different thing. Is it, though? He looked at her. What are you really? Not the cover story, not the official line. Who is Mara Knox when the uniform comes off? Knox thought about that question, the kind of question that didn't have safe answers. I'm someone who made a choice once, she said finally, and I've been living with it ever since. Was it the right choice? It kept people alive. That's the only metric that matters. And if you have to make it again today? She looked at him, and in the pre-dawn darkness, her eyes held something ancient and tired and absolutely certain. Then I'll make it the same way, without hesitation. Bus. The sun rose on a FOB that looked like it had been through a war, which technically it had. Soldiers moved through morning routines with the mechanical precision of people conserving energy for what was coming. Cade called a formation at 0700. 23 soldiers, down from the original 32, stood in ragged lines while he addressed them. "I'm not going to lie to you," he said, voice carrying across the compound. "Today's going to be bad. Intelligence indicates a major assault is imminent. Estimate 40-plus hostiles, possibly more. They're going to hit us hard, and they're going to hit us smart." He paused. Let that sink in. "Battalion says reinforcements are inbound in 60 hours. That might as well be 60 years. We're on our own. No air support, no QRF, just us and what we can carry." Silence. The weight of mathematics pressing down. "But here's what they don't know," Cade continued. "They don't know we've been preparing. They don't know we've bloodied them twice already. And they sure as hell don't know about Specialist Knox and what she's capable of." Every eye turned to Knox. She wanted to disappear. "So here's the plan," Cade said. "We fight, we hold, we make them pay for every meter. And when the sun sets tonight, we're still going to be standing here. Questions?" No one spoke. "Then get to your positions. And remember, you're infantry. This is what we do." The formation broke. Soldiers moved to their assigned sectors, checking weapons, pre-positioning ammunition, making peace with mortality. Cole found Knox by the TOC. "Big speech. Big day. You ready for this?" She checked her rifle magazine, seated it with a solid click. "Ready as I'll ever be." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I've got." The attack came at 1100, and it came with mathematics. Mortars first, 3 tubes firing in sequence, walking rounds across the FOB with the precision of people who'd practiced. The barrage lasted 7 minutes, long enough to suppress defenders, short enough to conserve ammunition. Then the assault. They hit from 3 sides simultaneously, north, south, east, a coordinated push that required communication and training, and the kind of tactical sophistication that spoke to professional leadership. Knox stood in the TOC with Cade, watching the battle develop through radio reports and the scope of violence visible through the window. "North sector taking heavy fire. Multiple dismounts with RPG support. South perimeter engaged, vehicle-mounted weapons. East side holding, but ammunition's running low." Cade grabbed the radio. "All positions, maintain fire discipline. Don't waste rounds on suppression. Make every shot count." Knox studied the tactical display. Colored pins representing friendly and enemy positions, arrows showing axes of advance. She saw the pattern immediately. "They're fixing us in place," she said. "The 3-sided assault isn't meant to penetrate. It's meant to pin us while they maneuver the real killing blow." "From where?" Knox moved to the window, glassed the western perimeter, the one sector that wasn't under heavy assault. And there, in the distance, she saw it. Dust plume. Multiple vehicles. Moving fast. "West, they're going to punch through our weakest sector with mechanized infantry." Cade's face went white. "We don't have anti-armor on that side." "Then we need to move it, now. If we shift forces, we weaken the other sectors. If we don't, they roll right through us." Cade made the decision in 3 seconds. "All units, reorient anti-armor assets to western perimeter. Gomez, get the Javelin team moving." "Javelin's still down, sir." Gomez's voice crackled back. Knox grabbed the radio. "Then get me the M2. The 50 cal can punch through light armor." "Knox, that's..." "Now, Sergeant!" The urgency in her voice left no room for argument. Gomez acknowledged, and through the window, Knox watched soldiers manhandle the Ma-Deuce from the eastern wall to the west. The dust plume was closer now. She could make out shapes, 3 technicals, a BTR, and what looked like a soft-skinned truck full of infantry. 2 minutes to contact, she said. Cade looked at her. "Can we stop them?" "I don't know." "That's not reassuring." "It's honest." The vehicles hit the outer perimeter at speed, and the .50 caliber opened up, that distinctive bark that sounded like the universe clearing its throat. Tracers reached out, found the lead technical, and tore it apart. The vehicle slewed sideways, flipped, burned. Second technical, same result. But the BTR kept coming, its armor shrugging off the 50's rounds like mosquito bites. "We need to stop that vehicle," Cade shouted. Knox was already moving. She grabbed her rifle, sprinted for the western wall, climbed onto a HESCO barrier, and exposed herself to incoming fire for a clear line of sight. The BTR's turret was rotating, seeking the Ma Deuce, and in 3 seconds it would find it and eliminate the only weapon they had that could hurt it. Knox raised her rifle. The BTR was 400 meters out and moving. She'd have 1 shot, maybe 2, before the turret found her. She aimed for the vision block, the narrow slit where the driver looked out, a target the size of a dinner plate on a moving vehicle at 400 meters in combat conditions. Impossible shot. She took it anyway. The round struck true, and through her scope she saw the glass shatter. The BTR swerved, driver blinded or wounded or both. It hit a ditch, tipped, and the infantry truck behind it had nowhere to go, slammed into the BTR's flank, and both vehicles became a tangled mess of metal and screaming. The assault from the west broke, but the assault from the other 3 sides intensified. Knox dropped from the barrier, sprinted back to the TOC. Cade met her at the door. "Specialist, I know, we stopped 1 punch. The other 3 are still coming." A massive explosion rocked the southern perimeter, satchel charge against the barrier. Through the smoke, figures poured in. "Breach! Southside breach!" someone screamed. Knox grabbed her rifle. "I've got it." "Knox, I've got it!" She ran toward the breach, and behind her she heard Cade on the radio. "All elements, Sand Viper is engaging South Breach. Provide supporting fire." Sand Viper. The call sign she'd tried to bury. The identity she'd tried to kill. It was back. She reached the breach as the first fighters came through. There were too many of them, 8, 10, a dozen, and they were moving with purpose and training. Knox didn't hesitate. She dropped the first fighter with a headshot, the second with 2 to the chest. Transition to the 3rd, 4th, 5th, her rifle an extension of will, each trigger pull a decision rendered in brass and lead. But there were too many. A fighter got through her fire, raised his AK. Knox transitioned to her sidearm, shot him twice, but his finger was already on the trigger. The burst went wide. Chen had appeared from nowhere, put 3 rounds into the fighter before he could correct his aim. "I've got your flank," Chen yelled. Torres appeared on the other side. "And I've got your 6." The 3 of them formed a firing line at the breach, and what had been a penetration became a kill zone. Fighters tried to push through, died trying, tried to retreat, died anyway. The breach held, but ammunition was running low. "I'm down to my last mag," Torres shouted. "Same," Chen confirmed. Knox checked her own load. 3 magazines left, maybe 90 rounds total. Not enough. Not nearly enough. Another wave hit the breach, larger, better coordinated. Knox shot until her rifle ran dry. Reloaded, shot again. Beside her, Torres went down. Not hit, just tripped on debris. A fighter saw it, swung his weapon to capitalize. Knox shot the fighter before he could fire. Then shot 2 more who tried to follow up. Torres scrambled to his feet. "Thanks." "Thank me later." The assault intensified. More explosions, more breaches. The FOB's perimeter was collapsing, defense dissolving into chaos, and Knox could see the moment approaching. The moment when discipline broke and survival instinct took over and soldiers stopped being a unit and became individuals desperately trying not to die. She'd seen it before. In the mountains. In the snow. Saw how it ended. "Fall back," someone was yelling. "Fall back to the TOC." Soldiers began retreating, not routed, not panicked, but pulling back under fire, giving ground because holding it cost more than it was worth. Knox grabbed her radio. "All units, controlled withdrawal to secondary positions. Maintain fire and movement." "Knox, who authorized—" Cade's voice. "I did. We can't hold the perimeter. Fall back to the TOC. Establish a final defensive line." Silence on the radio. The second where Cade made the choice, trust her or overrule her. "All units, you heard her? Fall back. Rally point TOC." The withdrawal was ugly but functional. Soldiers bounded back while others covered, the dance Knox had taught them, muscle memory overriding fear. They consolidated at the TOC, 19 soldiers now, down from 23, in a defensive circle around the command post. The enemy owned the perimeter, but they didn't own the center. Not yet. Cade appeared beside Knox, face blackened with soot. "This is as far as we go. We hold here or we die here." "Then we hold." The enemy assault paused, regrouping, reloading, preparing for the final push. Knox used the moment to redistribute ammunition. Every soldier got what was left, divided evenly, 40 rounds each, maybe 50. When the last attack came, they'd have 5 minutes of fighting before the guns ran dry. 5 minutes to live or die. Cole appeared at her shoulder. Whatever happens next, it's been an honor serving with you. Save the eulogies, Sergeant. We're not dead yet. Yet. She looked at him, at Torres, at Chen, at all of them. Soldiers who'd gone from mocking her to trusting her to following her into hell because she'd proven she knew the way. Listen to me, she said, voice carrying to the entire defensive circle. They think they've won. They think we're broken. But they don't understand something fundamental about infantry. She chambered around, the sound sharp and final. We don't quit. The assault came, the final push, everything they had left, a human wave that intended to overwhelm through sheer mass and momentum. Knox met them with mathematics. She positioned herself at the point of contact, rifle up, and began shooting with the clinical precision of someone who turned violence into art. Each shot placed, each shot terminal, each shot reducing the enemy's combat power by 1. Around her, the others took inspiration, stopped thinking about dying, started thinking about making it cost. The enemy wave crashed against them and broke. Not completely, not permanently, but enough that the assault faltered, hesitated, began to fragment. Through the smoke and chaos, Knox saw him, the enemy commander, standing behind his fighters, directing the assault with hand signals and shouted orders. 450 meters, uphill angle, crosswind, moving target, impossible shot. She'd made impossible shots before. She settled into her position, controlled her breathing. Let the world narrow to the reticle and the target and the space between heartbeats. Fired. The enemy commander dropped, and with him the assault's cohesion. Fighters looked around, uncertain, leaderless. The wave that had been coordinated became confused. Pour it on, Cade shouted. Break them! The defenders fired with renewed fury, and what had been an assault became a rout. The enemy fell back, scattered, disappeared into the wadis and ridgelines. Silence fell. Knox lowered her rifle, hands shaking now with adrenaline burn-off. Around her, soldiers slumped against barriers, gasping, bleeding, alive. Status, Cade called. The count came back. 16 effective soldiers, 7 wounded, 3 critical, but alive. Still breathing, still fighting. Knox sat down hard, rifle across her lap, and stared at nothing. They'd held. Barely. And in 48 hours, when the enemy regrouped and reinforced and came back harder, they'd have to do it all over again. She wasn't sure they could. Wasn't sure she could. Cole sat beside her, his own hand shaking. That shot. The commander. I've never seen anything like it. Luck. Bullshit. That was skill. She didn't argue. Didn't have the energy. Cade approached, knelt in front of her. When he spoke, his voice carried something new, not just respect, but understanding. Specialist Knox, he said formally. Sir? I'm giving you tactical command of this FOB's defense. Knox looked at him, shocked. Sir, I can't. You already have. The platoon follows you. They trust you. And frankly, you're better at this than I am. He stood, offered his hand. I'm asking you to keep us alive. Can you do that? She looked at the hand, at the soldiers around her, at the tactical impossibility of defending this position against an enemy that wouldn't stop coming. Thought about the mountain, the snow, the weight of command and the price of failure. Thought about doing it right this time. She took his hand, stood. Yes, sir, she said. I can do that. And in that moment, something shifted. The trainee became the commander. The weapon became the wielder. Sandviper was active. And she had 48 hours to turn 19 exhausted soldiers into a force capable of surviving what was coming. She looked at Cade, at Cole, at all of them. All right, she said quietly. Here's what we're going to do. Knox stood in the center of what remained of FOB Rattlesnake's defensive perimeter. 16 soldiers in various states of exhaustion and damage. Ammunition running low, water running lower, hope measured in hours instead of days. The sun had climbed toward its apex, turning the compound into an oven, and somewhere beyond the ridgelines an enemy force was licking its wounds and planning the knockout punch. She had tactical command now. Cade had given it to her, and the platoon had accepted it with the kind of silent acknowledgement that came from watching someone turn impossible into survivable 3 times in a row. Command. The thing she'd been stripped of, the thing that had broken her, the thing she'd sworn she'd never want again. And here it was, offered freely, carrying the weight of 19 lives that would die or survive based on decisions she made in the next 48 hours. First things first, she said, voice cutting through the post-battle haze. Casualty collection? Get the wounded to the aid station. Everyone else redistribute ammunition. I want a count of every round, every grenade, every piece of ordnance we have left. Soldiers moved to comply, muscle memory taking over where conscious thought had failed. Cole approached, limping slightly from a twisted ankle. What's the plan? Knox pulled out her notebook, pages stained with sweat and dust, filled with tactical diagrams and contingency plans she'd been refining since the day she arrived. We can't defend this whole perimeter anymore, not with 16 effectives, so we don't try. She pointed to the map. We contract to a tighter defensive position. Use the TOC as the anchor. Build concentric rings of fire. Make them fight for every meter. That's a siege defense. That's survival. We hold the center, we control the high ground, we force them to come to us through kill zones we've prepared. She looked at him. It's not pretty, but it's the only math that works. Cade joined them, face drawn but determined. How long can we hold? Depends on their appetite for casualties. If they're willing to take losses, maybe 12 hours. If they're cautious, maybe 36. And reinforcements arrive in 48, which means we need to buy time we don't have with resources we're running out of. Cade rubbed his face, exhaustion written in every line. What do you need from me? Your authority. When I give orders, I need them followed without question or hesitation. No time for debate, no time for second guessing. Can you do that? He met her eyes, and something passed between them. The understanding that this was the moment where doctrine died and pragmatism lived, where the rules written in safety dissolved in the face of necessity. You have it, he said. Whatever you need. Well, Knox spent the next 3 hours transforming the FOB's center into a fortress. She positioned the Ma Deuce to cover the western approach, the most likely avenue for another mechanized assault. Placed the remaining 2 M240S to create interlocking fields of fire on the south and east. Pre-positioned ammunition at each fighting position so soldiers wouldn't have to expose themselves to resupply. And she did something else, something she'd learned in the mountains when conventional tactics had failed and unconventional ones became the only option. She turned the perimeter into a trap. Using the remaining claymore mines, she created kill zones at the most likely breach points. Strung tripwires connected to grenades in areas where the enemy would seek cover. Positioned the mortar tube to fire pre-plotted coordinates she'd walked and ranged personally. Torres watched her work with something approaching awe. Where did you learn to do this? Trial and error. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. He didn't push, just helped string wire and position mines, trusting that she knew what she was doing because the alternative was admitting they were all going to die anyway. By 1400, the transformed defensive position was as ready as it would ever be. Knox walked the perimeter one final time, checking angles, identifying dead space, making mental notes of adjustments that would need to happen when, not if, the assault came. Chen found her at the northern fighting position, staring out at the valley. Knox, you need to rest. I'll rest when I'm dead. That's what worries me. He sat beside her. How long has it been since you slept? She tried to remember, failed. Doesn't matter. It matters if you collapse during the next firefight. I won't collapse. You're human. You have limits. She looked at him, and for just a moment the mask slipped. The professional competence, the tactical certainty, all of it falling away to reveal something raw underneath. My limits got 12 people killed in the mountains, she said quietly, so I don't trust them anymore. Chen absorbed that. What happened up there? Knox was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, we were inserted to eliminate a high-value target. Intel said minimal security, quick in and out. Intel was wrong. She stared at the horizon. We got compromised 3 hours in. Team leader called for extract. Higher said negative, complete the mission. So we pushed forward. And? And we walked into an ambush that killed 4 soldiers in the first 30 seconds. Team leader took shrapnel to the throat. Assistant team leader froze. I was the junior operator, lowest on the pole, but I was the only one still thinking clearly. So you took command? I took command. Called in danger close strikes on our own position to break the ambush. Executed a fighting withdrawal through terrain that should have been impossible. Carried wounded. Left dead because I couldn't carry everyone. Her voice went flat. Made it to an extract point 40 kilometers away. Took 3 days. Lost 8 more soldiers on the way. But you saved 5. I failed 12. That's exactly how it works, Sergeant. When you take command, when you make the calls, every death is yours, every wound, every body bag. And when it's over, when you've done everything right and people are still dead, the brass doesn't ask what you saved. They ask what you lost. Chen was quiet, processing. Is that why they buried you? Because you lost people? They buried me because I didn't ask permission before taking command. Because I violated about a dozen regulations saving those 5 lives. Because I proved that sometimes the right tactical decision is the wrong political one. She stood, shouldered her rifle. And now I'm doing it again, and when this is over, they'll bury me deeper. Then why do it? She looked at him, and her eyes carried the weight of old ghosts and older promises. Because the alternative is watching good soldiers die when I know how to keep them alive. And I can't do that again. Won't do that again. At 1600, the secure phone in Cade's office rang. He answered it, listened, and his face went through several expressions before settling on carefully controlled rage. Understood, he said finally. Knox is standing right here. I'll put her on. He handed Knox the phone. She took it like it might bite. Knox? The voice on the other end was the same one from before, neutral, emotionless, carrying authority that didn't need volume. Sand Viper, status report. FOB defensive posture consolidated. Enemy sustained significant casualties. Estimate next assault in 12 to 18 hours. Your assessment of survivability? Knox glanced at Cade, at Cole standing in the doorway, at the window showing soldiers working on defenses, with the desperate energy of people who knew time was running out. Low, she said. We're undermanned, low on ammunition, and facing a numerically superior force with professional training. Without reinforcement or air support, we'll be overrun. Understood. Your orders are to hold until relieved. And if we can't hold, then you execute contingency protocol Omega. Knox felt her blood go cold. Omega protocol. The option nobody talked about. The last resort when the position was lost and the enemy couldn't be allowed the propaganda victory. Destroy everything. Leave nothing behind, including yourself. That's a death sentence, she said quietly. That's an order. The FOB cannot fall into enemy hands. The intelligence value alone would compromise operations across the province. So sacrifice 19 soldiers to protect intelligence most of them don't even know exists. Sacrifice is inherent to military service. You know this. I know that orders and morality don't always align. Silence on the line. Then, are you refusing a direct order, Specialist? Knox looked at Cade. His face had gone white. He'd figured out what protocol Omega meant. Cole's hand had drifted to his sidearm. Not threatening, just instinctive. She thought about the mountains, the choices, the consequences. Thought about making the same choice again and expecting different results. No, she said, I'm not refusing. I'm telling you that Protocol Omega won't be necessary because we're going to hold this position. How can you be certain? Because I'm very good at keeping people alive, and I'm done following orders that assume we're already dead. She hung up, handed the phone back to Cade. His hand shook taking it. They want us to blow the FOB if we're overrun. Yes, that's their plan, not mine. She moved to the map board, studied it with fresh eyes. They sent me here because they needed someone who would follow that order if it came to it. Someone with a history of making hard calls. Someone disposable. You're not disposable, Cole said. To them I am. To everyone above the pay grade of lieutenant colonel, We're all just numbers on a spreadsheet and acceptable losses in a bigger game. She traced the defensive positions on the map. But here's what they didn't count on. I'm not interested in following orders anymore. I'm interested in keeping you alive. That sounds like mutiny, Cade said carefully. That sounds like tactics. She looked at both of them. I can hold this FOB. I can keep us alive until reinforcements arrive. But I need you both to trust me completely. No questions, no hesitation, no calling higher to confirm my orders. Cade and Cole exchanged glances. An entire conversation happened in that look. Years of service, doctrine, regulation, the weight of oath and duty balanced against the reality of survival. What's your plan? Cade asked. Yet, Knox laid it out over the next hour, using the map and tactical diagrams to illustrate a defense that looked insane on paper but had the kind of calculated madness that came from experience fighting impossible battles. They're going to hit us one more time, she said. Maximum effort, everything they have left. They'll probe first, test our strength, find weak points. Then they'll mass their assault on whatever sector looks weakest. So we reinforce everywhere, Cole said. We can't. We don't have the bodies, so instead we make one sector look deliberately weak. Draw them in, then collapse the trap. Torres had joined them, listening with the focus of someone who knew his life depended on understanding. You're talking about a kill zone, deliberate deception. I'm talking about using their aggression against them. They've taken casualties. Their pride is hurt. They want to finish this, so we give them what looks like an opportunity, and when they commit to it, we destroy them. And if they don't take the bait, Chen asked, then we fight them straight up and pray ammunition lasts longer than their patience. Cade studied the plan, looking for flaws, finding several, but also seeing the brutal logic underneath. This is high risk. This whole situation is high risk. At least this way we control some of the variables. And if it fails, Knox met his eyes. Then I'll execute Protocol Omega myself, and you get the platoon out before the charges blow. That's non-negotiable, Lieutenant. If this goes wrong, if they breach our final line, you take everyone who can walk and you run. I'll buy you time. The room went silent, soldiers processing what she'd just said, that she was willing to die alone to give them a chance at survival. Cole broke the silence. No. Sergeant, no. We don't leave people behind, not you, not anyone. If the alternative is everyone dying, then everyone dies together. He looked around the room. Anyone disagree? Silence. But not the hostile kind. The kind that came from soldiers realizing they'd formed something beyond a unit, something that looked like family. Knox felt something crack in her chest. Not breaking exactly, but shifting. The isolation she'd maintained, the distance she'd kept, all of it suddenly feeling less like protection and more like prison. All right, she said quietly. No one gets left behind. But that means everyone follows the plan exactly. No heroics, no improvisation. We do this as a team or we don't do it at all. Heads nodded. Then let's get to work, she said. We've got maybe 6 hours before they come. I want every meter of that kill zone perfect. They worked through the afternoon and into evening, transforming the southern sector into a carefully crafted deception. Knox positioned soldiers to make it look undermanned, 2 fighters where there should be 4, gaps in the wire that appeared accidental, fighting positions that looked hastily abandoned, but underneath the appearance of weakness lay teeth. Claymores hidden in the approach routes, mortar tubes pre-ranged on every grid square, machine guns positioned in defilade, invisible until they opened fire. The whole sector was a spring-loaded trap waiting for someone to apply pressure. At 1800, Knox called a formation. Everyone who could stand gathered in the shadow of the TOC while the sun painted the western sky in shades of warning. Listen up, she said. In a few hours they're coming. They're going to hit us hard. They're going to try to break us, and they're going to fail. She let that settle. They're going to fail because you've been trained by the best infantry in the world, because you've already proven you can take their best shot and stay standing. And because tonight, you're not fighting for your country or your flag or any abstract concept. You're fighting for the soldier next to you. That's all that matters. That's all that's ever mattered. She looked at each face, Torres, Chen, Gomez, with his bandaged arm, all of them. I can't promise you'll all survive. I can't promise this won't hurt. But I can promise that if we stick to the plan, if we trust each other, we've got a chance, a good chance. What about you? Gomez asked. What are you fighting for? Knox thought about the mountains, the snow, the faces of soldiers she'd failed to save. I'm fighting to make sure I don't have to remember any more names, she said quietly. The formation broke. Soldiers moved to their positions, checking weapons one final time, writing letters they hoped they wouldn't need, making peace with mortality in whatever way worked for them. Cade found Knox at the southern perimeter, staring out at the darkening valley. That was a good speech, he said. It was honest. Same thing, isn't it? Not always. He stood beside her, silent for a moment. Then, I read the full report, about the mountains, the classified sections. Knox tensed. And the recommendation from your commanding officer, the one who survived because you carried him 8 kilometers with a punctured lung, was that you received the Medal of Honor. She said nothing. But someone higher up the chain killed it, buried the recommendation along with most of the operation details, reduced your rank, transferred you out, made you disappear. That's old news, Lieutenant. It's relevant news, because whoever made that call, whoever decided your tactical competence was less important than political optics, they're the same people who sent you here knowing you'd be in this exact situation. Knox looked at him. Your point? My point is they wanted you to fail, or die, or both. Tidy ending to a messy story. He paused. But you're not going to give them that satisfaction, are you? She almost smiled. Almost. No, sir, I'm not. Good. He offered his hand. Then let's make sure we're all here to tell them to go to hell when this is over. She shook it, feeling the weight of alliance, real alliance, earned through fire instead of given through rank. The attack came at 21:45, and it came with fury. Mortars first, a barrage that lasted 15 minutes, longer than before, designed to suppress and demoralize. Soldiers hunkered in their positions while the world exploded around them, dirt raining down, ears ringing, fear and adrenaline fighting for control. Then silence. The kind of silence that came before storms. Knox stood in the TOC, radio handset in one hand, rifle in the other, watching the tactical display and waiting for the assault she knew was coming. Movement, southern sector, Torres reported. Multiple dismounts, advancing in bounds. Hold fire, Knox ordered. Let them get close, make them believe it. They're at 75 meters. Hold. 50 meters. Hold. She could hear the tension in her own voice, feel it in the radio silence. Every instinct screamed to engage, to shoot, to not let the enemy get close. But the plan required patience, required trust. 25 meters. Knox, they're almost on top of us. Spring it, the southern sector erupted. Claymores detonated in sequence, shredding the lead elements. Machine guns opened up from concealed positions, catching the second wave in crossfire. Mortars began falling on pre-plotted coordinates, boxing in the assault force with high explosive. The kill zone became a slaughterhouse. But the enemy didn't break, didn't retreat. They pushed through the fire, taking casualties that would have stopped a lesser force, driven by something beyond tactics, pride maybe, or the understanding that retreat meant defeat meant failure. They hit the wire, blew it with charges, pushed through. They're in the perimeter, Chen screamed. Second line, engage, Knox ordered. The inner defensive ring opened fire. Soldiers who'd been holding position while their brothers drew the enemy in, now shooting with the kind of calculated fury that came from watching friends die. Knox grabbed her rifle, moved to the fighting position, and began working. She didn't think, didn't hesitate, just shot. One target after another, muscle memory and training fused into something beyond conscious thought. Each trigger pull a decision. Each round a solution to a problem currently trying to kill her. Beside her, Cole matched her rhythm. Then Torres. Then Chen. The defensive line held. Bent, but didn't break. But there were still too many of them. A technical truck crashed through the northern wire. Unexpected. Unplanned. The kind of tactical adaptation that turned plans into suggestions. Its mounted gun began tearing through fighting positions, forcing soldiers to cover, suppressing return fire. Knox saw it, calculated the angles, made a decision. "Cover me!" She ran, sprinted across open ground toward the nearest Ma Deuce, incoming fire chasing her footsteps, rounds cracking past close enough to feel the pressure wave. She dove behind the gun, swung it toward the technical, and opened fire. The .50 caliber rounds walked up the truck's hood, through the windshield, into the engine block. The vehicle shuddered, died, and the gunner tried to swing his weapon toward her. Knox adjusted her aim, put a burst into the technical's fuel tank. The explosion lit up the night, and in the orange glow she saw them, dozens of fighters, more than she'd estimated, more than they could handle, a human wave that would overwhelm through mass if nothing else. This was the moment, the point where conventional defense failed and something else was required. She grabbed the radio. "All units, execute fallback to final defensive positions. Move now!" Soldiers broke contact, bounded back to the pre-planned rally point, a tight circle around the TOC last stand territory, the place where they'd die or survive together. Knox covered the withdrawal, the Ma Deuce speaking its brutal language, buying seconds that soldiers turned into meters of ground. When the last soldier cleared, she abandoned the gun and ran. Made it 10 meters before an RPG struck the position she'd just left, the explosion lifting her off her feet and slamming her into a HESCO barrier. Everything went white, then black, then pain. She couldn't hear, couldn't see clearly, could taste copper and dirt and her own mortality. Hands grabbed her, Cole and Torres dragging her to cover. "Knox, stay with us." She tried to speak, couldn't form words. Everything was distant and wrong. "She's hit!" "How bad?" Hands searching, finding blood, too much blood. Location she couldn't identify through the shock. "Get her to the aid station." "There is no aid station anymore." The world was fragmenting. Knox fought to hold on to consciousness, onto purpose, onto the understanding that if she passed out now, soldiers would die trying to protect her instead of themselves. She forced words. "Leave me. Fight." "Not happening," Cole said, and he sounded angry, furious even, in a way she'd never heard. "That's an order. You said no one gets left behind. That includes you." They dragged her to the final defensive position, propped her against a barrier. Someone, Chen maybe, was doing something to her side, bandaging, applying pressure, the pain enormous and clarifying. Knox's vision cleared. She could see the situation developing, enemy advancing from 3 sides, defenders down to maybe 12 effective soldiers, ammunition running critically low. This was it. The moment where mathematics caught up to courage and reality crushed optimism. This was where they died. Unless... She grabbed the radio with bloody hands. "TOC, this is Knox. Execute contingency Sierra." "Knox, what are you... Execute it now!" Sierra wasn't in the official plan. Wasn't something she'd briefed. It was the backup to the backup. The option she'd prepared in silence because she knew there'd be a moment when nothing else worked. The mortar tube fired. Not at the enemy, but at the FOB's fuel dump. The round struck true, and 5,000 gallons of diesel ignited in a fireball that turned night into day. The blast wave rippled outward, catching the advancing enemy in its radius, burning some, scattering others, creating chaos and confusion and opportunity. "All units, advance!" Knox screamed into the radio. "Push them back while they're disorganized." It was insane. Wounded defenders counterattacking against a larger force. Suicidal by any tactical standard. But it worked. The enemy, expecting a final defensive stand, wasn't prepared for an assault. They fell back, regrouped, and in that moment of hesitation, the defenders hit them with everything left. Grenades, rifle fire, fury. The enemy line broke, scattered, retreated into the darkness. And then, blessed sound, helicopter rotors. Not the enemy, not reinforcements that were too late. Apaches. 2 of them, appearing like avenging angels, 30mm cannons singing death, rockets turning enemy positions into craters. Behind them, Chinooks, heavy-lift birds carrying the QRF that should have been there hours ago, finally arriving because someone somewhere had decided the FOB was worth saving after all. The enemy, caught between defenders ahead and gunships above, made the smart choice. They ran. Knox slumped against the barrier, radio falling from her hand, blood soaking through Chen's hasty bandages. Stay awake, Cole was saying. Medic's coming. Stay with me. She wanted to. Wanted to see this through. See her soldiers survive. See the sun rise on a victory instead of a grave. But the darkness was patient and insistent, and she'd been fighting it for too long. Tell them, she managed. Tell them we held. Then the darkness won. Knox woke to white ceiling tiles and the smell of antiseptic, the universal signature of military hospitals, where survival came with paperwork and the aftertaste of morphine. Her side screamed with each breath, bandaged tight enough to make her wonder if they'd found all the shrapnel or just the pieces worth removing. She tried to sit up. Failed. Tried again with more determination and less success. Easy. Cole's voice rough from exhaustion. He sat in a chair beside her bed, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Probably hadn't. You've got 3 cracked ribs, a punctured lung, and about 37 pieces of metal they decided to leave in because fishing them out would have done more damage than leaving them alone. Knox's throat felt like sandpaper. Water. He held a cup with a straw to her lips. She drank, the cold liquid painful and necessary. How long? She asked. 36 hours. They medevaced you to Kandahar, stabilized you, and you've been out since. He set down the cup. Scared the hell out of us. Medics said you'd lost enough blood that you should have been dead twice over. Should have doesn't count. No, I suppose it doesn't. He leaned back and she could see the weight on him. Not just exhaustion, but something deeper. Relief, maybe. Or the aftermath of fear. Everyone else? 14 made it. Torres took shrapnel to the leg, but he'll walk again. Chen's got a concussion. Gomez's arm is infected, but they think they caught it in time. He paused. 5 didn't make it. Morrison, Jackson, Keller, Price, and Vance. Gone before the medevac landed. Knox closed her eyes. 5 names. 5 soldiers who'd trusted her tactical judgment, followed her orders, died anyway. That's not on you, Cole said, reading her face. Everything's on me. I had tactical command. And 14 of us are alive because of it. The brass ran the numbers. Conventional defense would have gotten everyone killed. Your plan, crazy as it was, gave us a chance. Some of us took it, some didn't. That's combat, not command failure. She wanted to argue, wanted to carry the weight because that's what command meant. Ownership of outcomes, good and bad. But the morphine was pulling at her, making arguments feel distant and academic. The FOB? She asked. QRF secured it. Engineers are rebuilding what the fire didn't destroy. Enemy scattered into the hills. Estimate we killed or wounded over 60 of them across all engagements. He smiled without humor. They wanted a propaganda victory, got a massacre instead. Knox processed that. 60 enemy casualties against 5 friendly KYA. By any objective standard, a tactical success. By the standard of knowing those 5 names, a failure she'd carry forever. There's something else, Cole said, his tone shifting. You've got visitors, officers from battalion, been waiting for you to wake up. How long? Since yesterday. That's not good. No, he agreed. It's not. They came 2 hours later after the doctors cleared her for conversation, and the nurses had checked her vitals with the practiced efficiency of people who'd seen too many wounded soldiers and not enough miracles. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Reeves entered first, West Point pedigree, combat tabs, and the kind of posture that suggested a man who took regulation seriously and deviation personally. Behind him came a captain Knox didn't recognize, carrying a tablet and the expression of someone there to take notes for a court-martial. Cade entered last, face carefully neutral, positioning himself near the door like he might need to make a quick exit or block one. Reeves pulled up a chair, sat without asking, and studied Knox with the cold assessment of a man evaluating equipment for continued service or disposal. Specialist Knox, he said. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by an RPG, sir. That's because you did. He glanced at her chart. Punctured lung, severe blood loss, multiple lacerations, possible TBI. The doctors are impressed you're alive. I'm harder to kill than I look. Apparently, he set down the chart. Let's talk about FOB Rattlesnake. Specifically, let's talk about your actions during the siege. Here it comes, Knox thought. The reckoning. The price for breaking rules and succeeding anyway. I'm listening, sir. Reeves pulled out his tablet, scrolled through what looked like an after-action report. Lieutenant Cade states that you assumed tactical command of the defensive operation without proper authorization, that you executed combat operations outside the wire without clearance, that you destroyed FOB infrastructure, specifically the fuel depot, without consulting chain of command, that you issued orders countermanding established protocol and endangered lives through reckless tactical decisions. Knox said nothing. Every word was true. He also states, Reeves continued, that those same actions saved the lives of 14 soldiers who would otherwise be dead, that your tactical acumen exceeded his own, that you demonstrated leadership under fire that meets or exceeds the standard expected of NCOs with 10 years more experience. He looked up from the tablet. Lieutenant Cade is recommending you for the Silver Star and immediate promotion to sergeant. Knox blinked. That wasn't what she'd expected. Sir, I don't interrupt. Reeves wasn't done. Sergeant Cole corroborates Lieutenant Cade's assessment. So does every soldier who survived. In fact, I've conducted 15 interviews, and the consensus is universal. You saved that FOB. The question I'm here to answer is whether saving the FOB justifies the dozen regulations you violated doing it. The room went very quiet. Knox could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the morphine wearing off and pain creeping back in. What's your assessment, sir? She asked. Reeves set down the tablet. My assessment is complicated. On paper, you're a disciplinary nightmare. You took command without authorization. You conducted operations that risked tactical assets. You ignored direct orders from higher regarding Protocol Omega. I followed the spirit of those orders, sir. They said hold the FOB. I held it. By destroying half of it. The half I destroyed was already compromised and turned into a tactical advantage. The half I saved contained soldiers, equipment, and intelligence. I made the choice any competent commander would make. You're not a commander. You're a specialist. I was a sergeant before someone decided my competence was less important than their politics. The words came out sharper than she'd intended, carrying weight she'd been holding for months. Reeves's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. You're referring to the mountain operation, he said. I'm referring to the fact that I've been court-martialed once for doing exactly what I did at FOB Rattlesnake. Took command when leadership failed, made hard calls that kept people alive, got punished for it because the outcome was messy and someone needed a scapegoat. That operation was classified. That operation was a clusterfuck that someone buried to protect their career. And now I'm in the same situation. Did everything right, saved lives, and I'm waiting to find out if success matters more than the rules I broke achieving it. Reeves was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. You know what the difference is between the mountain operation and FOB Rattlesnake? Sir, this time you have an entire platoon vouching for you. This time the brass can't bury it quietly because too many people know what happened. This time the political cost of punishing you exceeds the cost of admitting that maybe, just maybe, sometimes the right tactical decision violates doctrine. He stood, straightened his uniform. You're getting your rank back, Sergeant Knox. You're also getting that Silver Star whether you want it or not. And you're getting a choice. Sir? You can go back to Signal Corps, ride out your contract doing radio maintenance somewhere safe and boring, or you can accept a transfer to a unit that values tactical innovation over procedural compliance. A unit that needs operators who can think on their feet and don't wait for permission to save lives. Knox felt her chest tighten, not from the punctured lung, but from something else. Hope, maybe, or the absence of the weight she'd been carrying. What unit, sir? That's classified until you accept the transfer. But I can tell you it involves the kind of work you're already good at. The kind that doesn't make it into official records and doesn't come with parades. Special operations. He was offering her a way back in. Back to the work she'd been stripped of. Back to the identity she'd lost. Why? She asked. Why offer this now? Reeves's expression softened slightly. Because someone very senior watched the footage from FOB Rattlesnake's security cameras. Watched you turn a losing position into a victory through nothing but competence and courage. And that person decided that maybe the Army made a mistake the first time. Maybe political expediency shouldn't override tactical necessity. He moved toward the door, then paused. You don't have to decide now. Take time. Heal. Think about what you want. But know this, the option exists, and it won't exist forever. He left, taking the captain with him. Cade remained, closing the door behind them. Oh, you knew, Knox said. I suspected. Cade sat in the chair Reeves had vacated. When I made that call on the secure line when I reported what happened, I thought I was signing your death warrant. Court-martial. Dishonorable discharge. Prison, maybe. Instead, you got me a commendation. Instead, I told the truth. And it turns out the truth was what you needed all along. He leaned forward. Knox, Mara, what are you going to do? She looked at her hands, at the IV line and bandages, at the physical evidence of choices made and consequences survived. I don't know, she admitted. Part of me wants to take the transfer, go back to what I was. Prove I can do the work without breaking this time. And the other part? The other part remembers what that work costs, remembers the mountains, remembers that the higher up the chain you go, the more the decisions are about politics and less about people. So you're thinking about Signal Corps? Playing it safe? I'm thinking about what kind of soldier I want to be. What kind of person? She met his eyes. I spent months hating myself for what happened in the mountains, hating that I took command, made calls, lost people. And then I did it again at Rattlesnake, and people still died. But this time everyone's calling me a hero. Because this time you won. No, this time I had backup. Had you trusting me instead of fighting me. Had soldiers willing to follow instead of questioning every order. The tactics were the same, the competence was the same. The only difference was context. Kate absorbed that. So what does that tell you? It tells me that competence isn't enough. That doing everything right doesn't guarantee success. That sometimes good soldiers die despite your best efforts, and you have to live with that. Can you? Knox thought about Morrison, Jackson, Keller, Price, and Vance. Thought about the soldiers she'd lost in the mountains. Thought about the weight of names and the price of command. I can live with losing people I tried to save, she said slowly. What I can't live with is not trying, not using what I know because I'm afraid of the consequences. Then you already know your answer. Do I? You're not Signal Corps material, Knox. You never were. You're a warrior. The question isn't whether you go back to special operations. The question is whether you're ready to do it on your terms instead of theirs. Cole and Torres visited that evening, bringing contraband. Actual coffee, not the hospital approximation, smuggled in a thermos that had seen better days. Knox drank it gratefully, feeling more human with each sip. So, Torres said, settling into a chair, rumor is you're some kind of superhero now. Silver Star, promotion, secret mission offers. Rumors exaggerate. Do they, though? He grinned. Because from where I was sitting, you took a shit situation and turned it into a victory through nothing but tactical brilliance and refusal to die. That's pretty close to superhero territory. Superheroes don't lose people. The grin faded. No, they lose people too. They just don't quit afterward. Knox looked at him, really looked, and saw something she hadn't noticed before. Respect. Not the kind you gave to rank or authority, but the kind you gave to people who'd proven themselves under fire. I'm sorry about Morrison, she said quietly. He was on my flank when the RPG hit. I should have... Don't. Torres' voice was firm. Morrison knew the risks. We all did. You gave us a plan that gave us a chance. He took it. Didn't work out. That's not on you. The families got letters from Lieutenant Cade explaining that their sons and brothers and husbands died fighting instead of being slaughtered in an overrun FOB. They died as soldiers, not victims. You gave them that. Knox felt her throat tighten. She'd been so focused on the names she'd lost that she hadn't thought about the names she'd saved. The families who wouldn't get those letters because their soldiers were still breathing. What are you going to do? Cole asked. After you heal? I don't know yet. Well, whatever you decide. He pulled something from his pocket. Dog tags. 5 sets, collected from the fallen. These need to go to their families. Official channels will handle the paperwork, but I thought maybe you'd want to do it personally. Say the words that matter. Knox took the tags, felt their weight, understood what Cole was offering. Closure, maybe, or the beginning of it. A way to honor the fallen while acknowledging she hadn't failed them. Circumstances had. "Thank you," she said. "We're the ones who should be thanking you." Cole stood, squeezed her shoulder. "Get better, Sergeant. The Army needs more like you, whether they know it or not." They left, and Knox sat alone with 5 sets of dog tags and a decision that felt both impossible and inevitable. The choice came 3 days later, when the doctors cleared her for limited duty and the morphine had been reduced enough that she could think clearly without the pharmaceutical haze. Knox sat in a wheelchair on the hospital's observation deck, a concrete balcony overlooking Kandahar airfield, watching C-130S take off and land in the eternal ballet of logistics and war. Cade found her there. "Thought you might be here," he said, pulling up a chair. "Needed air." The hospital was starting to feel like a cage. "I know the feeling." He was quiet for a moment, watching a Chinook lift off, rotors beating the air into submission. "I'm putting in for a transfer, back to the States, staff position. They offered me a company command, but I turned it down." Knox looked at him, surprised. "Why?" "Because FOB Rattlesnake taught me something about myself. I'm a good officer, but I'm not a great one. Great officers make decisions under pressure that save lives. Good officers follow doctrine and hope it works out." He met her eyes. "You're a great officer, Knox, even without the rank. And the Army needs great officers more than it needs good ones." "That's generous?" "That's honest." He pulled out an envelope, handed it to her. "Transfer orders. Came through this morning. They're giving you 2 weeks to decide." Knox opened the envelope, scanned the orders. Assignment to a unit designation that was just numbers and letters, no name, no location. The kind of anonymity that screamed special access program. "This is what I think it is?" she asked. "Probably. I don't have clearance to know for sure." He leaned back. "But I can tell you this. Whoever's behind it went through a lot of bureaucratic channels to make it happen. Someone high up wants you back in the fight. Or wants to control me. Maybe both." He paused. "What's your gut tell you?" Knox thought about the mountains, thought about FOB Rattlesnake, thought about the pattern. Competence rewarded with punishment until it became undeniable, then rewarded with opportunity that came with strings attached. "My gut tells me this is a second chance that comes with expectations I might not be able to meet. Or it's a chance to do the work you're good at without someone punishing you for being good at it. You're an optimist, Lieutenant. I'm a realist who watched you save 19 lives through competence and courage. If that's not worth a second chance, nothing is." Knox spent the next week visiting soldiers, those still in Kandahar, those already rotated home, those in various stages of recovery and denial. She didn't make speeches, didn't try to be inspirational, just sat with them, shared coffee, listened to stories about fights and fear and the strange guilt that came with surviving when others hadn't. Chen told her about his daughter's upcoming birthday. Torres showed her photos of a girlfriend he was planning to marry. Gomez talked about the nightmares and the therapy and the slow crawl back to normal. And each conversation hammered home the same truth. These soldiers trusted her, followed her, survived because of decisions she'd made in moments when there was no time for doubt. She'd earned that trust, earned it through action instead of rank, through competence instead of politics. The question was whether she wanted to keep earning it. On the 10th day, Knox found herself in a small office at Kandahar's command center, face to face with a colonel who wore no name tape and carried identification that was technically classified. "Sergeant Knox," he said, not offering a hand, not wasting time on pleasantries. "You've read the transfer orders. You understand what's being offered." "I understand the words. I don't understand the why." "The why is simple. You're good at a very specific job, and we need people who are good at that job. People who can think tactically, act decisively, and make hard calls without hesitation. The last time I made hard calls, I got court-martialed. The last time you made hard calls, you saved lives in a politically inconvenient way. This time, the politics align with the tactical needs." He leaned forward. "I'll be direct. What happened in the mountains was handled poorly. You were scapegoated to protect egos. That was wrong. This transfer is an attempt to correct that wrong. By putting me back in the same situations that got me in trouble the first time, By putting you in situations where your competence is valued over your compliance, where results matter more than procedure. Knox studied him, this nameless officer offering redemption or manipulation, hard to tell which. "What happens if I refuse?" she asked. "Then you go back to Signal Corps. Honorable career, safe, boring. You retire in 15 years with a pension and the knowledge that you played it safe after learning a hard lesson. And if I accept? Then you go back to doing what you're good at, with support this time, with people who understand that sometimes the right choice violates the manual. Until it doesn't. Until I make a call that saves lives but embarrasses someone, and I'm right back where I started." The colonel didn't deny it. "That's the risk. But it's also the job. You know this. You've always known this." Knox looked out the window at the airfield, at the helicopters and cargo planes, at the machinery of war that ground forward regardless of individual choice. "I need to think about it," she said. "You have 48 hours. Then the offer expires." That night, Knox sat alone in her temporary quarters, 5 sets of dog tags spread on the desk in front of her. Morrison, Jackson, Keller, Price, Vance. 5 names, 5 soldiers, 5 decisions that had rippled into consequences she couldn't undo. She thought about the mountains, the snow, the 12 names she carried there. Thought about FOB Rattlesnake, the fire. The 5 names she'd carry from here. 17 total. 17 soldiers who died under her command or her influence or her tactical judgment. 17 failures. Or 17 attempts that resulted in partial success instead of total catastrophe. The perspective mattered. The interpretation changed everything. She picked up Morrison's tags, felt their weight, remembered his face in the moments before the assault, young, scared, determined. He'd followed her orders, trusted her judgment, died anyway. But 14 others hadn't. The math was brutal, the morality was complex. The choice was hers. Knox set down the tags, pulled out a notepad, and began writing letters. One for each family. Not the official condolence form. Personal words from someone who'd been there, who'd known their sons and brothers and husbands in the last moments. She didn't lie. Didn't make them heroes they hadn't been. Just told the truth. They'd fought well. They'd trusted each other. They'd died as soldiers instead of victims. It took 4 hours to write all 5 letters. When she finished, she felt lighter, not unburdened exactly, but less crushed by the weight. The dead deserved to be remembered, but the living deserved her attention too. She picked up the transfer orders, read them one final time, and made her choice. 24 hours later, Knox stood in Colonel Reeves's office, envelope in hand. "I've made my decision, sir." He took the envelope, opened it, read the single page inside. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture suggested he'd been hoping for this outcome. "You're accepting the transfer?" "Yes, sir, with conditions." "Conditions aren't typically part of these arrangements." "Then this is an exception." Knox met his eyes. "I'll take the assignment, I'll do the work, but I won't be a weapon someone else aims. I make my own calls. I own my own consequences. And if someone tries to bury me again for doing my job well, I walk." Reeves considered that. "That's not how the chain of command works." "That's how I work, sir." For a long moment, silence. Then Reeves smiled, actually smiled, genuine instead of professional. "All right, Sergeant Knox, you'll have your autonomy, within reason. But understand this. Autonomy comes with accountability. You make the calls, you own the outcomes, good and bad." "I've been owning them anyway, sir. Might as well get official recognition for it." He extended his hand. She shook it. "Welcome back to the fight, Sergeant. Try not to blow up too many FOBs this time." "No promises, sir." Knox left Kandahar 3 days later on a C-130 headed east, to where exactly she didn't know and wouldn't until she arrived. The transfer orders were deliberately vague, the assignment classified, the future uncertain. But for the first time in months, uncertainty felt like possibility instead of threat. Cole and Torres came to see her off, along with Chen and a dozen others who'd survived FOB Rattlesnake, and decided that seeing her leave required presence. "Stay safe out there," Cole said, gripping her hand. "Same to you, Sergeant. Write if you can." "You know I can't." "Then don't die." That's an order. She almost smiled. I'll do my best. Torres handed her a photo, the platoon, taken the day before the siege, everyone young and alive and unaware of what was coming. So you remember what you're fighting for? Knox took it, felt the weight of faces and names, and the responsibility they represented. Thank you, she said quietly. The crew chief called for boarding. Knox shouldered her pack, everything she owned in the world reduced to 50 pounds of gear and memories, and walked toward the ramp. Halfway up, she stopped, looked back. The soldiers stood at attention, saluting, not because regulation required it, but because respect demanded it. Knox returned the salute, holding it longer than necessary, burning the image into memory. These were her people, her brothers, the ones she'd fought beside and bled for and refused to let die. And wherever she went next, whatever she did, she'd carry them with her. The C-130 climbed into the Afghan sky, engines roaring, turbulence shaking the airframe. Knox sat in the webbed seating, surrounded by cargo and strangers, watching Kandahar disappear below. She thought about journeys and destinations, about the distance between who she'd been and who she was becoming. Thought about the girl who'd enlisted to prove something, the operator who'd been broken by impossible choices, the specialist who'd been buried to protect egos. Thought about the sergeant who'd refused to stay buried. The plane banked east, chasing the sun, and Knox closed her eyes. Not to sleep, she'd learned that sleep was a luxury combat soldiers couldn't afford, but to prepare for whatever came next, for whoever she'd have to become to survive it. She'd been given a second chance, not to prove herself, she'd done that already, but to define herself, to be more than a weapon, to be a soldier who made choices instead of following orders, to be someone who kept people alive, not because regulation demanded it, but because competence required it and morality insisted on it. The future was uncertain. The mission was classified. The outcome was unknown. But for the first time since the mountains, Knox felt ready. Ready to fight. Ready to lead. Ready to make the hard calls and own the consequences. Ready to be Sand Viper. Not the ghost story, not the buried legend, but the soldier who refused to quit even when quitting was easier. The C-130 flew east into morning light, and somewhere in the cargo hold, Sergeant Mara Knox smiled. Not because the fight was over, but because she'd finally figured out what she was fighting for. Team. 3 months later, in a nondescript office building that didn't officially exist, a briefing room filled with operators who'd all been broken and rebuilt in different ways. Knox stood at the front, tactical brief displayed on the screen behind her, and looked at faces she didn't know yet, but would learn to trust. All right, she said. Here's what we're dealing with. And somewhere in the back of the room, a colonel without a name tape smiled and thought about second chances and the soldiers who earned them. Quote, the battlefield doesn't care about your rank or your gender or your past. It only cares about competence and courage. And sometimes the quietest soldier in the room is the one carrying the heaviest weapon, not the rifle in their hands, but the refusal to let others die when they know how to keep them alive. Never underestimate the one who stays silent. Some legends survive by refusing to miss.